Chapter 482. November 25th, Tienda Zodiac, Founding Day. Good for opening a business, seeking wealth, trading, traveling, moving, dating. The opening ceremony of Lu Chen's first film, A Chinese Ghost Story, was held in the famed Temple of the Lion Rock Film and Television City. The famed Temple of the Lion Rock Film and Television City was an old site. It was first built in the late Qing dynasty. Later it was abandoned after two disasters. The ruins were overgrown with weeds, and it became a safe haven for wild foxes. In the early 1990s, when the Lion Rock Film and Television City began to build, the old site of the famed temple was included. The scene designer did not restore and rebuild it, but renovated it on the basis of the ruins, making it an excellent scene for shooting zombie and horror films. Many of the Xiangjiang zombie and ghost films that were popular in the 1990s were shot here. But now, due to the changes in the market, the popular themes in the past were no longer popular, and the utilization of the old site of the famed temple had decreased a lot. Therefore it was easy for the studio to rent it at a low cost. There was a long table in front of the temple, which was used to worship gods. It was covered with red velvet, with a statue of Emperor Guan in the middle. On the left and right sides were incense burners, roast suckling pigs, fresh fruits and so on. A camera was placed on the right side of the table, also covered with a red cloth so that no one could see it. In the open space a little further away, firecrackers were lit. Then, in the crackling sound, the crew members burned incense and worshipped the gods in turn, praying for a smooth shooting and the new film to be a hit. The ceremony of worshipping gods first originated in Hong Kong. People in Hong Kong believed in feng shui superstitions and liked to pray for good luck. The practice of worshipping gods and Buddha was very popular, and the film crew was no exception. There were many taboos. For example, the direction in which they prayed to the gods could not be wrong. At different times and different locations, everyone prayed to the gods in different directions. Roughly speaking, they had to pay attention to all directions. If they were to place it in the southwest instead of the south, there would be a difference of thousands of miles. Some of them even had to be accurate down to the latitude and longitude. It sounded incredible, but many Xiangjiang film crews had to invite experts to calculate before they started shooting, and they were not careless at all. Otherwise, if there were any twists and turns during the shooting process, they would inevitably suspect that they had encountered some bad luck. Lu Chen Studio had just been established, and its partner, Jiayang Pictures, was not a top company in the industry. Therefore, the opening ceremony was not very big, but it was also very grand. Zhou Yi, the behind-the-scenes boss of Jiayang Pictures, personally came to the scene. Of course, he accompanied his cousin Nie Mingzhu, the heroine of A Chinese Ghost Story. Mrs. Jean also came, together with her two goddaughters, Ji Xiaodai and Li Xinyan. The two girls had arranged a small role in the film. Qin Wenxiang's daughter and Qin Si. Qin Cio E Qin Studio. After he graduated E in Studio E and AO and E Qin E and E in Studio Qin 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 and when NE in Studio Wu Wu when Qin Qin Studio and Qin Yang Studio and when Qin Studio Qin 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 Studio and Qin E and Qin Qin E Yen and Qin Si played the role of Shaoqing in A Chinese Ghost Story, a supporting female character with some weight. In fact, in the movie A Chinese Ghost Story, there were only 4 important characters: Ning Kaichen, Nie Xiaoqian, Yin Qixia, and the villain, Granny Tree Fairy. Basically, all the limelight was focused on them, especially the first 3. As the first supporting female character, Shaoqing did not have many scenes in the movie, but both Chen Wenxiang and Qin Si were extremely satisfied. Other than Lu Chen, there were no other big-name actors in the movie. Ma Rongzhen had long been outdated and reduced to being an extra, and most of the others were newcomers. Lu Chen himself had just made a name for himself in the film and television industry in Hong Kong, and he did not rely on the work itself. However, the investment of A Chinese Ghost Story was as high as 30 million yuan. Although it was not a top-notch production, it was precisely because there were no big names that there was no high salary. This large sum of money had to be invested in filming and post-production. It would be unfair if it did not produce a high-quality product. Qin Si was already extremely lucky compared to her peers to be able to get such an important supporting female role in a movie for the first time. She was standing at a very high starting point from the beginning. As long as A Chinese Ghost Story did not fail miserably after it was released, she would have valuable qualifications. Seniority represented status. After offering incense and worshipping the gods, Lu Chen, Zhou Yi, Wan Xiaoquan, and Ye Mingzhu worked together to remove the red veil on the camera. The crew members gathered around applauded in unison, and there were also media reporters taking photos. It was said that this procedure originated from the fear of scratching. The so-called scratching referred to the film in the early days of the film era, when the film in the camera was accidentally scratched by the parts inside during filming. Once scratching occurred, it would cause immeasurable losses to the crew. However, machine scratching was unpredictable and difficult to prevent, so the only thing that could be done was to cover the camera with a red cloth to suppress evil. Nowadays, cameras had already been digitized, so there was no possibility of scratching. However, the more precise something was, the greater the problem, so this custom was still retained. After the red cloth was removed, the opening ceremony of A Chinese Ghost Story was basically over. Finally, it was time for the representatives of the crew to be interviewed by the media. Most of the media reporters were invited by Jaeyoung Pictures. There were more than a dozen of them, both big and small. They were there to support and to promote the film. Every reporter was stuffed with red packets. If a film and television entertainment company wanted to gain a foothold in Hong Kong, they could not afford to offend the people in the media. Otherwise, they would scold them all day on TV and newspapers, or make up some false rumors. Then they would not be able to make money. Of course, it was impossible to please all the media. Jaeyoung Pictures was a well-known film and television production company, and its boss, Zhou Yi, was a businessman in Hong Kong. He did not lack connections in the relevant media. However, there was a portion of the media that came uninvited. These reporters were obviously very interested in Lu Chen, so after the opening ceremony ended, they immediately surrounded him and asked him questions. "Mr. Lu Chen, are you going to use this film to change the structure of Hong Kong's film industry? Why do you have such confidence and certainty? If this film flops, what are you going to do? Return to the mainland?" "Mr. Lu Chen, as far as I know, none of the actors in this film are big names. May I ask?" The reporters' questions were like a machine gun, and all of them were aggressive. Chen Wenxiang and Wan Xiaoquan, who were standing at the side, had their faces turned black on the spot. Zhou Yi was very shrewd, and there was a hint of displeasure in his eyes. Chapter 483. The entertainment reporters of Xiangjiang were the existences that the Xiangjiang entertainment circle loved and hated. They could praise an artist to the sky, but they could also easily pull them down from the sky. Many Xiangjiang celebrities had a kind of fear towards entertainment reporters. In Xiangjiang, how to properly deal with entertainment reporters was a compulsory course for all new artists. If they failed this course, they would suffer sooner or later. There were many examples in the past that could prove it. As soon as the opening ceremony of A Chinese Ghost Story ended, Lu Chen was surrounded by these uninvited entertainment reporters. The questions were more tricky and even worse. This made people feel worried because Lu Chen was a star from the mainland. He had only debuted for a short time, so he definitely had not experienced such a scene. Once his youthful temperament flared up, the consequences would be unpredictable. With the nature of Xiangjiang's media, a small matter could be blown up into 10. They were not easy to deal with. Chen Wenxiang saw that the situation was not good and quickly gave Zhang Xiaofeng a look. He was ready to step forward to protect Lu Chen and separate him from the entertainment reporters to prevent Lu Chen from saying the wrong thing. However, Lu Chen did not panic at all. Even when he heard the obviously malicious questions, he still had a calm smile on his face, looking extremely calm. A few days ago at Xiangjiang Airport, Lu Chen had already seen a similar scene and had a direct understanding of Xiangjiang's paparazzi. He pondered for a moment and said to the microphone that was sent to his mouth, "There is no such thing as failure in my dictionary. I believe that this, A Chinese Ghost Story, will definitely be a success. As for whether it can change the pattern of Xiangjiang's movies, I don't dare to boast. Just as I said in ATV's entertainment trio, I want to be a catfish. A catfish is not a crocodile, and I don't have that big of an appetite. As for the quality of the movie, you are very welcome to go to the cinema to watch and evaluate it. You can leave your contact information here. Our studio will give you free tickets and premiere gifts." Lu Chen's answer could be said to be a combination of words and actions. He cleverly avoided the trap of the reporter's question, but he also fully demonstrated his confidence. In the end, he did not forget to give some benefits. Whether it was Chen Wenxiang or Zhou Yi, the heavy burden in their hearts was instantly lifted. Most of the time, Lu Chen's youth made people feel uneasy, but in reality he had never disappointed them. There is no such thing as failure in my dictionary. This sentence was absolutely domineering. When the entertainment reporters heard it, their eyes lit up as if they had grasped something important. One of them eagerly asked, "The investment for A Chinese Ghost Story is said to be 30 million yuan. Although it's not considered a top-notch production, it's still considered very high. Since the investment is so high, why don't I see any stars in the movie? Is it because you can't get him, or is the pay all on your own, or is 30 million just a bluff? Before the launch ceremony, Lu Chen's Hong Kong studio and Jaeyoung Pictures announced the news related to A Chinese Ghost Story on their respective blogs, including the investment amount and the cast. The reporter questioned Lu Chen aggressively about the 30 million budget. Lu Chen took a deep look at him and asked, "May I ask which media are you from?" The other party replied proudly, "I'm a reporter from Polo Daily." Polo Daily? Lu Chen had an impression of this Hong Kong newspaper. He smiled faintly and said, "First of all, I'm acting in A Chinese Ghost Story for free, so there's no problem of me spending the budget on myself." A common method for stars to invest in movies or TV series was to sign a high salary for themselves. On the one hand, it was to increase their value, and on the other hand, it was also to increase the investment amount as a publicity point. For example, Lu Chen's real value was 10 million yuan, but it became 50 million yuan through left-handed publicity. Many star artists, including some big stars, did this, and investors were happy to cooperate. However, in the movie, A Chinese Ghost Story, Lu Chen did the opposite. He did not take a penny, and his goal was to use more of the budget on pre-filming and post-production. Zero salary? The budget was used on filming and production. The expressions of the entertainment reporters present couldn't help but be a little strange. In the film and television industry, such a thing could not be said to be unique, but it was also a rare existence now. Nowadays, Hong Kong's movies either took the low-budget, vulgar path or were blockbusters with big stars. There were really very few people who could sink down and seriously produce a movie. Some of them had already been eliminated by the market. The young man in front of them really gave everyone a different feeling. The reporter from Polo Daily did not give up. He was rejected on the budget issue, so he suddenly changed the topic and pointed his spear at Ma Rongqing, who was standing next to him. "As far as I know, Mr. Ma Rongqing is a famous box office poison in the circle. Why did you invite him to play an important supporting role in this movie?" The nickname Box Office Poison was obtained by Ma Rongqing in the later stage of his acting career. At that time, the movies he participated in were losing money, but it was maliciously imposed on him. In fact, at that time, Hong Kong's movies were going downhill. Ma Rongqing's type was relatively fixed, and the roles he was invited to play were basically the same. The theme itself was not good, and coupled with the environment, it was strange that he did not fail. However, after the nickname spread, Ma Rongqing's acting career was basically ruined. No one invited him to act in movies anymore, so his situation was getting worse and worse. He had to be reduced to working as a handyman in Lion Rock to make a living. In front of everyone, the reporter from Polo Daily opened Ma Rongqing's scar, which made Ma Rongqing's face suddenly turn red. He couldn't help clenching his fists. His knuckles turned white because of the excessive force, but he lowered his head. Because he couldn't do anything, whether to refute or fight back, he would only fall into the other party's trap. Ma Rongqing didn't want to lose this precious opportunity, so he could only silently endure the humiliation. Lu Chen noticed Ma Rongqing's expression, and his eyes flashed with an imperceptible sharpness. He said without hesitation, "I have never heard of box office poison. In my eyes, there are only good actors and bad actors, and Ma Rongqing is an excellent and dedicated actor. I believe that he will be able to play the important role of Yan Qixia well. This is why I invited him." Lu Chen's words were sonorous and powerful, with unshakable firmness. It was his strong support for Ma Rongqing. It was also a powerful counterattack to the reporter with ulterior motives. Ma Rongqing couldn't help but straighten his back and raise his head again. At this moment, his heart was filled with the feeling of, "A gentleman would die for a bosom friend." Chapter 484. Mainland star Lu Chen shoots new film for zero pay. Is it real or just hype? Lu Chen supports Ma Rongqing. Is salted fish about to make a comeback? Industry insiders assert that mainland actors are afraid of not acclimatizing to Hong Kong, and their prospects are worrying. Is it arrogance or confidence? Is an investment of 30 million yuan a waste of water? The box office poison of the past is shooting a new film today. On the second day after A Chinese Ghost Story officially started shooting, many media and entertainment pages in Xinjiang published relevant news. Other than a few paid news, most of the other newspapers and periodicals were full of doubts. Such a situation would basically not happen in the mainland. Xinjiang's territory was small and the size of the market was limited. There were many media and most of them only paid attention to Hong Kong news. There were not that many gossip news in the entertainment industry to hype. Therefore, Lu Chen, who had recently become the focus of attention, inevitably became the target of some media. The pressure of public opinion he faced was actually related to the mentality of many Hong Kong people. Many people in Xinjiang believed that the entry of mainland funds and enterprises would intensify competition and snatch the jobs of local people. Although Lu Qin threw out the catfish theory in 3 Entertainment Men Talk, and dispelled the doubts of some people, the influence of the program was limited after all. He still needed to prove himself with more facts. For some of the Xinjiang media who were eager to see the world in chaos, Lu Qin had become the representative of the mainland film and television industry in Xinjiang. They were desperately trying to dig out topics from him. Among them, the fiercest was the Polo Daily. This well-known newspaper in Xinjiang published 3 reports in its entertainment section at the same time, questioning Lu Chen's zero pay, ridiculing the box office poison Ma Rongzhen, and asserting that a Chinese ghost story would not be successful. One of the articles listed the data seriously and quoted the analysis and comments of so-called industry experts. In the end, the conclusion was that the mainlanders represented by Lu Chen would not be able to gain a foothold in Xinjiang's entertainment industry for long. There were many criticisms and few praises. There were very few neutral people. The citizens of Xinjiang watched the liveliness, and to a large extent, it promoted A Chinese Ghost Story, which had just started shooting. The crew of A Chinese Ghost Story, who had already entered the shooting state, had no time to care about the outside world. They were busy working on the set of Lion Rock Film City, trying to finish shooting before the new year. Crack. Wan Xiaoquan frowned, waved the loudspeaker in his hand and said loudly, "What's wrong with the lighting here? Adjust it immediately and reshoot." Wan Xiaoquan, who picked up the microphone again, felt as if he had been given a new life. He had inexhaustible energy. His position in the crew was very special. He had the title of assistant director. In the future, his name would not appear at the beginning or the end of the movie that was broadcasted in the mainland, including the publicity. The reason was obvious. For at least 2 years, Wan Xiaoquan would have to tuck his tail between his legs. The nominal director of A Chinese Ghost Story was Lu Chen, but in fact, the film was directed by Wan Xiaoquan. It was nothing more than to avoid the policy. Because of this, Wan Xiaoquan paid more attention to this movie than Lu Chen. Before the shooting started, he studied the script all night and discussed the plot and characters with Lu Chen. He put all his attention into it. Wan Xiaoquan was good at shooting movies with costume themes. Many of his previous works had been successful at the box office and received good reviews. Moreover, he was known for his serious and meticulous work in the circle. Otherwise, Lu Chen would not have chosen him to direct his first movie. With Lu Chen's full support, enough funding, and away from the domestic right and wrong, Wan Xiaoquan is very scary when he is serious. After a few days of shooting, the members of the crew have been convinced by the director from China, and there have been no troublesome incidents of overtly complying but covertly opposing. Of course, the participation of Jiayang Pictures was indispensable during the shooting process. Today's scene was the scene where Ning Kaichen met Nie Xiaoqian for the first time in Lanrua Temple. Lu Qin, who was dressed like a scholar, had a great change in temperament under the careful makeup of the makeup artist. Because of the mistakes in the lighting, the reshooting went smoothly. It was already past noon when the shooting was finished. Wan Xiaoquan finally let go of the starving crew members and told them to quickly fill their stomachs. The stage manager's assistant brought over the incubator, which was filled with stacked lunch boxes. Although there were not many roles in A Chinese Ghost Story, the crew members who should not be missing were all there. Big and small people added up to nearly 100 people so that the shooting progress could be ensured. With so many people busy on the set, they certainly could not go to restaurants outside to eat. Otherwise, it would waste a lot of time going back and forth, and it would also affect their working state. Therefore, whether it was in China or in Hong Kong, the crew members basically ate takeout lunch boxes. The staff contacted the restaurant in advance, ordered the quantity and price of the lunch boxes, and delivered them on time. "Let's eat." Everyone gathered around and went to take the lunch boxes, then found a place to sit down and eat. Although Lu Chen was an investor, the screenwriter, and the lead actor, he and director Wan Xiaoquan also ate the same lunch boxes. There was no special treatment, and it could be said that they shared the joys and sorrows with everyone. But today's situation was a little special. When Lu Chen opened the lid of the lunchbox, he could not help but frown. Because the quality of the lunchbox in his hand was really a little terrible. The rice was yellow as if it was steamed with old rice. A few pieces of vegetables and cucumbers were wilted, and a few were not fresh. The poached eggs were missing, and the remaining 2 pieces of ribs only had bones and no meat. This lunchbox would probably be considered trash even if it was fed to a dog. What's going on? Today's lunchbox is so bad. Is it even edible? What's going on? It's all rotten. Hee hee, you guys eat, I'll just watch. Damn it. It was not only Lu Chen's lunchbox but the rest were the same. The crew members all complained. Seeing such a scene, Lu Chen could not sit still. He stood up with a sullen face, waved at the assistant who was still distributing the lunchboxes and said, "Please come here." The young assistant quickly put down the lunchbox, wiped his hands, ran over and asked, "Young Master Lu, what's the matter?" Lu Chen handed the lunchbox in his hand to him. "What do you think?" The assistant looked at the lunchbox, then looked at Lu Chen and said awkwardly, "Young Master Lu, I don't know." Lu Chen twitched the corner of his mouth and said lightly, "Then invite Old Merchant over." Old Merchant was a staff member of the crew of A Chinese Ghost Story, a veteran in the circle sent by Jieyang Pictures. Logically speaking, under his management such a thing should not have happened. There must be something wrong. Chapter 485. Old Merchant soon arrived. He was in his 40s and had a short stature and small eyes. He gave people the impression that he was very smart and eloquent. He was very good at coordinating all aspects. Although they didn't know each other before, Lu Chen was very satisfied with Old Merchant's ability after a few days. A crew member was the person in charge of daily affairs during the filming process. His main task was to take care of the basic necessities of the crew members, such as food, clothing, housing, and transportation. It was tedious but essential. If a crew didn't have a good crew member, there would often be a lot of problems. When Old Merchant saw the completely substandard boxed lunches, his expression suddenly changed. He was shocked and angry. "Child Lu, I'm really sorry. I'll go and find out what happened right away." Lu Chen nodded. "Then go and ask them to change the batch, or just order the boxed lunches from another restaurant." Although he didn't reprimand Old Merchant was obviously very stressed. He left in a hurry. Naturally, no one ate the boxed lunches. Everyone put the lunches back into the incubator. The atmosphere on the set was a bit strange. Many people sat together and whispered. One Xiaoquan said helplessly, "So, they don't want to do business anymore?" Chen Wenxiang said in a low voice, "I'm afraid it's not that simple." Lu Chen was shocked and asked, "Uncle Chang?" Chen Wenxiang hesitated and said, "The boxed lunches in the Lion Rock studio are occupied by 2 clubs. No one else can intervene. I don't know which restaurant our crew booked, but there's probably something wrong with them. Otherwise, no restaurant would do something like this." Clubs. Lu Chen was stunned. He didn't expect that a small matter like eating boxed lunches would involve Hong Kong's clubs. The clubs, Chen Wenxiang mentioned, were definitely not regular and good mutual benefit organizations, but gangs. In layman's terms, they were Hong Kong's underworld gangs. The gangs in Hong Kong were once very popular in the 1970s and 1980s. At that time, the activities of Xinghe, Sinan, Hongtang and other triad organizations were rampant. There were hundreds of thousands of gang members, and their forces were spread all over Hong Kong, Macau, Treasure Island and several countries in Southeast Asia. They even established branches in the Chinese areas of Europe and the United States. These big gangs and societies operated drug trafficking, smuggling, prostitution, piracy, gambling and so on. The small societies under them collected protection fees and dominated the market, causing the public order of Xiangjiang to be very bad. At that time in Xiangjiang, even the rich and powerful felt insecure and had to bring bodyguards with them when they went out. Otherwise, they might be kidnapped and blackmailed by a few daring gangsters. On July 15, 1987, the long-accumulated conflict between the 2 gangs, Xian and Nhung Tang, broke out. Thousands of gang members from both sides fought on the streets of the prosperous areas of the new territories, resulting in the tragic result of 78 deaths and 154 serious injuries. There were countless minor injuries and several innocent passers-by were killed by stray bullets. The bloody case of the new territories on July 15 shocked the whole of Hong Kong, causing the people to protest on the streets. It also prompted the Xiangjiang government to finally make up their minds to solve this cancer, and specially applied for help from the troops stationed in Hong Kong. In March 1988, in the crackdown carried out by the Xiangjiang government, many triad organizations that had been rampant in Hong Kong for decades were uprooted. A large number of backbone members were either killed on the spot or arrested and imprisoned, which made countless people in Xiangjiang applaud. At this point, the public order of Xiangjiang had been fundamentally improved. However, the triad organizations that had great influence in Xiangjiang society did not completely disappear. After the old gangs such as Xinghe, Sinan, and Hongtang collapsed, new gangs emerged again. However, these new gangs no longer brazenly engaged in illegal activities. They registered companies to engage in legal operations and secretly did some business. The members of the gangs no longer easily wielded knives and guns, and the means of making money were more hidden. They even hired lawyers as legal consultants. This kind of new gang was even more difficult to deal with. Dealing with them was undoubtedly a very troublesome thing. And the gangs in Xinjiang had deep entanglements with the entertainment industry. Many film and television entertainment companies had the background and power of gangs in the past. Although they were basically washed clean, they were still secretly connected. In just a few minutes, Old Merchant came back with 3 people. Old Merchant's face was very ugly. He introduced to Lu Qin, "Young Master Lu, this is Manager Jiang of Honghua Restaurant Management Limited. Our crew's lunchbox is ordered through Honghua Restaurant. Manager Jiang and the others have something to talk to us about." This Manager Jiang of Honghua Restaurant was a middle-aged man with the head of a mouse and the eyes of a mouse. His hair was thickly oiled and he was worried that even flies would not be able to stand on it. He was wearing a suit and a tie, and he also wore a pair of nondescript gold-rimmed glasses, giving people the impression that he was wretched. "Young Master Lu, hello." Manager Jiang nodded and bowed to greet Lu Qin, opening his mouth to reveal a mouthful of gold teeth. Following behind him were 2 burly men. Their faces were expressionless, and their bare arms were covered with dark green tattoos. Their bulging muscles made them look like they were very powerful. Lu Qin immediately understood when he saw this posture. He nodded and lightly said, "Okay, let's talk somewhere else." It was definitely not okay here. The surrounding crew members were all watching, and many people's eyes were full of doubt. The place chosen for the conversation was a meditation room in the temple, which was also used as the crew's temporary office. After sitting down, Lu Qin went straight to the point and asked, "Manager Jiang, can you explain what happened to our crew's lunchbox today? Did we not pay the fees that we owed you?" Manager Jiang said with a smile, "Young Master Lu, your crew's food and beverage fees were paid on time. We are also very sorry that there was a problem with today's lunchbox. I can guarantee that this kind of thing will not happen again." But, he suddenly changed the topic and said, "The prices in Xinjiang are very high now. Recently, the prices of vegetables and pork have risen greatly. If we follow the original price, our company will lose money, so what?" Manager Jiang did not say any more and looked at Lu Qin with a smile. Lu Qin calmly continued for him, "So you want to raise the price?" "I'm really sorry." Manager Jiang rubbed his hands and the smile on his face became even wider. "There is nothing we can do about the price increase. Our company's employees also have to eat." Lu Qin interrupted his verbose words. "Just say it, how much do you want to raise it?" Manager Jiang gave Lu Qin a thumbs up. "Young Master Lu is really straightforward, worthy of being a big star from the mainland. In fact, it's not much. In the future, pay 55 yuan for a lunchbox, we guarantee the quality." 55 yuan. If Lu Qin remembered correctly, the original price of the lunchbox was 30 yuan, and now the price was increased to 55 yuan, which was equivalent to nearly doubling. Chapter 486. The crew of A Chinese Ghost Story had nearly 100 members. If the temporary hired extras were added, there would be more than 100 people. Even if 100 people were counted, 2 meals a day would require a total of 200 boxed meals. Originally, 30 yuan per box, the basic cost of meals per day would be 6,000 yuan. Now that it had soared to 55 yuan, that was 11,000 yuan, they had to pay an additional 4,500 yuan. The scenes involved in this movie were basically all in the Lion Rock film and television base. In the case of no outdoor shooting, the crew would need to stay for at least a month, which meant that they had to pay an extra 100,000 to 200,000 yuan. Honghua Restaurant was really black-hearted. According to the boxed meals from yesterday, it was at most 15 yuan in the mainland. If the quantity was large, they could still get a discount. Their profit itself was already very good. The prices in Xinjiang were high, but not to this extent. Wan Xiaoquan, who was sitting next to Lu Qin, couldn't stand it anymore. "You guys are..." Before he finished speaking, he was stopped by Lu Qin. Lu Qin's expression didn't change. He nodded and said, "If you can guarantee the quality of the food, then we can accept the price of 55 yuan, but we won't pay for this batch of boxed meals at noon." Manager Jiang obviously didn't expect Lu Qin to be so easy to talk to. He asked for an exorbitant price, but Lu Qin actually agreed so easily. Even with his cunning, he couldn't help but be stunned. "Really?" Lu Qin hooked his finger and knocked on the table, saying lightly, "I'm not kidding. That's good." Manager Jiang suddenly showed a proud smile. His eyes flashed a touch of greed and he continued to say, In addition, the boxed meals are boxed meals and the delivery will cost more. Was Honghua crazy? Even Chen Wenxiang looked angry. Manager Jiang, this is against the rules, isn't it? Clubs also had their own rules, especially the whitewashing clubs. Even if they were to bully others, they still had to follow the rules. Otherwise, if they caused public anger, they would be the unlucky ones. Previously, Manager Jiang asked for an exorbitant price. He nearly doubled the price of the boxed meals and Lu Chen agreed. Now, he actually wanted to pay for the delivery. It was simply a naked extortion. There was something wrong with the smell inside. Manager Jiang glanced at Chen Wenxiang meaningfully and said, "Brother Chang, rules are set by people. Don't you know that in this circle? That's the rule in our company now." He looked at Lu Chen as if he was looking at a fat sheep. "Young Master Lu, you are a big star who makes a lot of money every day. If you come to Shangjiang to shoot a movie, you will definitely make a lot of money. You don't need our hard-earned money, do you?" Hee hee, Lu Chen smiled, but there was no smile in his eyes. "I don't like trouble. If I can solve the problem with money, then I don't mind spending some money to avoid disaster. But this doesn't mean that I'm afraid of trouble. Since your company doesn't have the sincerity to cooperate, then you don't need to send boxed meals anymore. I believe that our crew won't be starving because of this." To be honest, the main reason why Lu Chen chose to start his film career in Shangjiang was because of the new film support policy issued by the Shangjiang government. With this policy, he could easily enter the domestic film market, and he could also establish a foothold in Shangjiang and radiate to Treasure Island, Australia and Southeast Asian countries. The benefits were self-evident. However, shortcuts were not easy to take. Lu Chen really didn't consider the gangs and clubs in Shangjiang at that time, because there was basically no such problem in domestic movies or TV series. As the saying goes, a strong dragon can't suppress a local snake. Lu Chen was not a strong dragon, so he was willing to spend more money in exchange for peace. As long as A Chinese Ghost Story was successfully filmed and released, how much he spent would naturally be earned back. However, the other party's greed and shamelessness were far beyond Lu Chen's expectations. They were insatiable, which made his patience completely disappear. Without Butcher Zhang, did they have to eat pigs with hair? Nonsense. Hearing Lu Chen's resolute refusal and his attitude turned 180 degrees, Manager Zhang's smile suddenly froze on his face, and he looked quite ridiculous. Lu Chen didn't give him a chance to speak. He got up and said, "Uncle Chang, see the guest out." So ruthless, Manager Jiang was furious. A strong man who had been standing behind him immediately stepped forward, raised his hand and pointed at Lu Chen and shouted, "How can you talk to our Manager Jiang? Don't be so shameless." Gangs and clubs were gangs and clubs. The factor of violence had long been hidden in their blood. Moreover, it was impossible to do this kind of monopoly business without strong power. The people brought by Manager Jiang were actually thugs. If everyone was good, they would naturally be decorations. But now that it was time to turn hostile, they had to show their strength. The hairy arms were black and thick, and the fingers with long radishes were about to poke Lu Chen's face. The stern rebuke was 100% deterrent for ordinary people. However, Lu Chen wasn't an ordinary person and he wasn't alone. There was no need for Lu Chen to respond. Wan Yong, who was originally sitting beside Lu Chen, suddenly made a move. He grabbed the opponent's finger with lightning speed and pulled it up. The burly man involuntarily let out a blood-curdling scream, startling everyone present. Under the severe pain, he instinctively raised his leg and wanted to kick Wan Yong, but Wan Yong's right foot kicked his knee first, causing him to suddenly lose his balance and heavily fall to the ground. This was the result of Wan Yong being lenient. If it was a life-and-death fight, the finger bones and patella would have been broken into several pieces. Wan Yong let go of his hand and stared at the other thug who was ready to make a move. No one doubted that if this guy made any unusual moves, he would inevitably suffer from Wan Yong's thunderous counterattack. Manager Jiang was also scared. After a while, he came back to his senses, gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, business can't be done, but benevolence and righteousness still exist. Let's wait and see." These two sentences were a bit incoherent, but no one thought it was funny. The people from Honghua restaurant left dejectedly. Wan Xiaoquan, Chen Wenxiang and the others didn't feel happy at all. Everyone knew that the real trouble was yet to come. The other party wouldn't let it go so easily. Lu Chen looked at Old Merchant and said, "When we first negotiated the cooperation, Jiayang Pictures had a guarantee. Now that something like this has happened, I want to know what your boss thinks." Compared to Lu Chen Studio, Jiayang Pictures was the local bully. Using the local bully to deal with the local bully was naturally the best choice. Lu Qin wasn't afraid of trouble, and he wouldn't easily take everything on himself. Otherwise, what was the point of having a partner? Under his intense gaze, old merchant felt a lot of pressure. Fine beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Young Master Lu, Jiang Pictures will give you an explanation. Lu Qin nodded and said, that's for the best. However, in his heart he didn't think that Jiang Pictures would succeed. It was impossible for Honghua to not know about the existence of Jiang Pictures. Manager Jiang was here to slap them in the face. Let's wait and see. Chapter 487. After driving away Honghua's people, the hundreds of people in the crew of A Chinese Ghost Story still had to eat. This problem was easy to solve. Lu Qin asked Chen Wenxiang to drive to the nearest restaurant to buy lunch boxes. Honghua Catering couldn't monopolize all the big and small restaurants around Lion Rock Mountain, could it? He gathered the crew members and gave them a brief explanation, asking them to overcome their difficulties for the time being. Of course, the crew members expressed their understanding. Even if many of them were muttering in their hearts, they all supported Lu Qin, the real boss, on the surface. It was not a big deal to eat late. They wouldn't die even if they skipped a meal. By the time Chen Wenxiang came back with the lunch boxes and everyone finished eating, it was already 2 p.m. The crew of A Chinese Ghost Story was not large. Most of the staff were sent by Jiang Pictures. The news spread quickly inside, so everyone basically knew what had happened. This made the people in the crew a little anxious. As a result, the shooting in the afternoon went wrong frequently. Wan Xiaoquan didn't know how many NGs he had made, which made him annoyed and his voice a lot rougher. Seeing this situation, Lu Qin decisively called it a day and asked everyone to go back to rest early. In order to calm people down, he also asked Chen Wenxiang to pay the crew a meal fee. The amount was not much, but it was considered a dinner fee, because the crew originally provided 2 meals for lunch and dinner. At the end of the day, Chen Wenxiang was careful and sent 2 more people to stay on the set to ensure safety. This was the trouble of offending gangs. If the other party played tricks on the set, it was possible that all the previous work of the crew would be wasted. After returning, Lu Qin gathered several important members of the studio together and discussed countermeasures at the same time of dinner. In this regard, the most experienced person was definitely Chen Wenxiang. He said, I just called my friend to confirm it. The backer of Honghua Catering is Xingyi Hall. At the end of the 80s, the triad organizations in Xiangjiang were severely attacked by the government. The 3 major gangs, Xinghe, Sinan, and Hongtang, collapsed. However, a centipede died but did not die, and many new gangs were re-established on the basis of the 3 gangs. Xingyi Hall was one of them. The Jiang family that established and controlled Xingyi Hall was quite famous in Xiangjiang. On the surface, the businesses they operated involved real estate, finance, import and export trade, catering and so on. The eldest of the Jiang family was called Jiang Tai. He was shrewd and valiant, and his business methods were rather ruthless. He married 5 wives and had more than 10 children. Among them, his 5 sons were known as the 5 Tigers in the Victory Hall. The general manager of Honghua Restaurant was Jiang Tai's 3rd son, Jiang Qinghua. In the industry, Jiang Qinghua's reputation was quite good, so Chen Wenxiang was very puzzled by Honghua Restaurant's tricks against the crew of A Chinese Ghost Story, because it was against the rules. I've already asked a friend in the industry to investigate and see what's going on. Chen Wenxiang continued, we have no grudge against Jiang Qinghua. If Jiang Pictures is not in trouble, then someone is trying to deal with us through Jiang Qinghua. Chen Wenxiang first suspected Jiang Pictures when something like this happened. He didn't know Jiang Qinghua at all, and he had never offended the Jiang family. Needless to say, Lu Qin had only been in Xiangjiang for a few days. Jiang Qinghua couldn't suddenly go crazy and cause trouble for them for no reason. As for Jiang Pictures, it was hard to say. The history of Jiang Pictures could be traced back to the 1980s. At that time, the gangs in Xiangjiang were very powerful, and they had a great influence on the film and television entertainment industry. If a film and television entertainment company did not have the background or relationship with a gang, it would be impossible for it to survive. At this point, who could guarantee that there weren't any old grudges left behind? In addition, there was Zhou Yi, the behind-the-scenes boss of Jiang Pictures. He had been doing business in Xiangjiang for so many years, and he was so smart that he must have offended a lot of people. All of these could cause trouble for the crew. Wan Xiaoquan frowned and asked, then what should we do? He wouldn't encounter such a thing when he was filming in China. What happened today made him feel very bad. He originally wanted to shoot the movie seriously, but he didn't expect that there would be new problems as soon as they started. Lu Qin said, I've already asked Jiang Pictures to give us an explanation. Our shooting plan should not be changed for the time being. Tomorrow's lunchbox will be bought by Brother Zhang outside. It won't be troublesome if there are people in cars. Although that was what he said, everyone knew that things would not be so simple. Hong Hua hadn't achieved his goal, and it was impossible for him to stop. However, in the current situation he could only take one step at a time and deal with the situation as it came. Wan Xiaoquan and Chen Wenxiang looked at each other and nodded. Ring ring ring. At this time, Lu Chen's cell phone suddenly rang. He took it out and looked at it. It's Zhou Yi. He pressed the call button, and the slightly feminine voice of the boss of Jiang Pictures came through the receiver. Master Lu? Lu Chen replied in a deep voice. Hello Boss Zhou. What can I do for you? Even a clay figurine had some anger. When they first cooperated, Jiang Pictures promised that they would be able to finish filming at Chinese Ghost Story smoothly. Other than the filming and production, they would be able to take care of everything else. Everyone had seen the result. Thinking of the half a day wasted and the emotional turmoil in the crew, how could Lu Chen not be angry? Through the microphone, Lu Chen seemed to be able to see the bitter smile on Zhou Yi's face at this moment. Young Master Lu, you're treating me like an outsider. I already know what happened today. The problem is very big. Can we talk face to face? Lu Chen thought for a moment and asked, when? Zhou Yi, let's do it now. Is it convenient for you? Lu Chen, sure. Zhou Yi gave him an address. It was not far from where Lu Chen was eating, so he brought Wan Xiaoquan, Chen Wenxiang and the others to the appointment. The place to meet was called Oaken Clubhouse. This private clubhouse was located in the bustling business district of Shenghuan. It was a place frequented by the upper class of Xiangjiang, and the membership fee was more than 1,000,000 yuan a year. Zhou Yi booked a private room in the clubhouse. He brought an assistant and Ye Mingzhu with him. When they met, Zhou Yi's first words were, Master Lu, I'm really sorry this time. Lu Chen suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. Because from Zhou Yi's tone, it seemed that he was planning to withdraw. Once Jiang Pictures gave up on the collaboration, it meant that Lu Chen would have to rebuild the crew and even choose a new female lead. All his previous efforts would be in vain. Chapter 488. People who knew and understood Zhou Yi thought that he was a real businessman. Businessmen valued profits over friendship. A real businessman often had great courage in the face of rich interests and dared to challenge the rules. Now that trouble had just appeared, Zhou Yi actually wanted to retreat, which really surprised Lu Chen. In this cooperation between the two sides, Lu Chen has given up a large part of the benefits. He is very confident about the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story. This work, which is regarded as a classic in the dream world, will inevitably shine its due light. The 30 million production cost was very likely to bring several times or even 10 times the profit. Of course, Zhou Yi definitely did not know the origin of A Chinese Ghost Story, but it was impossible for him to be ignorant of Lu Chen's influence and appeal in the mainland. Otherwise, he would not have actively promoted the cooperation. So what made him give up? Lu Chen was prepared for the worst in his heart. He said calmly, Mr. Zhou, you're exaggerating. Let's sit down and talk slowly. They all knew each other, so there was no need to introduce each other and greet each other politely. Everyone sat down together. Zhou Yi personally picked up the teapot and poured a cup of hot tea for Lu Chen. He sighed and said, Child Lu, you must be suspecting that Jiang Pictures or I have a grudge against Xingyi Hall, which is behind Honghua. But I can tell you frankly that I have never offended anyone from the Jiang family. If it's just the boss of Honghua, Jiang Qinghua, I'm not afraid. But his father, Jiang Tai, I don't even have the right to talk to him as an equal. It's not a problem with Jiang Pictures? Lu Chen was stunned. What was going on? Zhou Yi obviously understood what he was thinking and continued, I've already asked someone to find out what's going on with Jiang Qinghua. I believe there should be accurate information in the next 2 days. And according to my guess, the boss of Jiang Pictures hesitated for a moment, but he did not say anything. Lu Chen smiled faintly and said, Mr. Zhou, if you have something to say, just say it. It doesn't matter even if your guess is wrong. Zhou Yi smiled and said, I'm guessing that Honghua wants to take a stake in this movie. I heard that Jiang Qinghua recently has plans to set up his own entertainment company and enter the film industry. But in the current situation it's not easy for him to find a suitable partner, so you chose my movie as your stepping stone? Lu Chen immediately laughed. I'm just a newcomer from the mainland. In his eyes, I'm a fat sheep, right? Zhou Yi's expression was a little awkward, obviously agreeing with Lu Chen's words. This is just my guess. The real situation still depends on the other party. Lu Qin pondered for a moment. He tapped his fingers on the table and asked, If Honghua really wants to invest and I agree, what are your plans, Boss Zhou? Zhou Yi replied without hesitation, Then I'll withdraw. I can't afford to offend the Jiang clan. His answer was very straightforward, directly admitting that he was afraid. Lu Qin understood what he meant. What if I don't agree? Zhou Yi's answer was still straightforward. Jiang Pictures is willing to continue the cooperation, but we can't directly confront the Jiang clan. If Jiang Tai asks, then I can only withdraw. Lu Qin understood. Although Zhou Yi said that he didn't dare to offend the Jiang clan, the premise was that the boss of the Jiang clan, Jiang Tai, was also involved in this matter. Otherwise, Jiang Pictures would not give up the cooperation. But it was not realistic to count on Jiang Pictures to deal with Honghua. Zhou Yi's behavior was typical of a businessman to seek benefits and avoid harm. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a little shameless. But he was blunt and had the demeanor of a real villain. Everything was laid out on the table for discussion. Lu Qin wasn't angry. He thought for a moment and said, Then let's leave it at that for now. Boss Zhou, please find out more useful information about Honghua. If it involves any costs, our studio is willing to bear them. You're too kind, too kind. Zhou Yi waved his hand and said, Once there's news, I'll inform you immediately. Lu Qin nodded. Things could only be like this for the time being. The shooting had to continue tomorrow. He couldn't just stop farming when he heard Lala Gu's cry. He didn't want to run back to the mainland with his tail between his legs. If he didn't have a brave and fearless heart, even if he had the wealth of a world, how could he climb to the real peak? Before leaving, Nie Mingzhu, who had been silent, poured a cup of tea for Lu Qin. She said to Lu Qin, I like this script very much and I like the role of Nie Xiaoqian very much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I hope we can continue to work together happily. Lu Qin didn't quite understand Nie Mingzhu's attitude, but he accepted her kindness. After leaving Oaken Club, Wan Xiaoquan expressed his dissatisfaction with Zhou Yi in the car. This person is too cunning and unreliable. Do we really want to continue working with him? Lu Qin explained, If we give up working with Jiang Pictures now, things will become more troublesome. First, we have to figure out Honghua's real intentions and then we'll make plans. It was good that Zhou Yi had made things clear. When the time came, Lu Qin would be justified in kicking them out. Most importantly, in the conversation just now, Lu Qin felt that Zhou Yi had a trump card. He wasn't afraid of the Jiang family as he had said, and it seemed more like he was testing Lu Qin's attitude. As a result, the next day something happened at the Fane Temple film set in Lion Rock Studio. Someone had thrown 2 dead cats into the set, and they were unlucky black cats. The necks of the cats were broken. They must have been thrown in secretly in the early hours of the morning, Wan Yong said to Lu Qin, who had just arrived at the set. I asked Xiaoqin to take care of it. I didn't tell anyone else. This was purely a disgusting method. The other party didn't steal or rob, but deliberately did something to disgust people. It was useless to call the police. The Xiangjiang police wouldn't take such a small matter seriously. Moreover, after calling the police, it would be easy for the paparazzi to take photos and put them on the media. It would only have a greater impact on the crew. Lu Qin listened to Chen Wenxiang's advice and asked him to secretly control the news and not spread it. Lu Qin was very glad that he had arranged for 2 more people to be stationed at the set last night. Otherwise, if there were loopholes in the management, it would be easy for the other party to take advantage of them, and they might cause even more damage. However, what he didn't expect was that before noon, the news of the dead cats being thrown on the set had spread among the crew. Everyone had a strange look on their faces, and many of the crew members were absent-minded. The shooting process was also not smooth. In the afternoon, someone proposed to quit the crew. Chapter 489. The composition of a regular film crew was quite complicated. In addition to the actors, there were also producers, production directors, producers, planners, art directors, cinematographers, and so on. In addition, there were stage managers, makeup artists, art designers, lighting artists, and prop masters, together with the financial assistants. The number of people could easily exceed 100, and even a few hundred was common. The crew of A Chinese Ghost Story was relatively small. Because there were not many characters in the film, the number of actors was relatively small. However, the necessary people could not be missing. Apart from the dozen or so members of Lu Qin's studio, most of the crew members were sent by Jiang Pictures. Some of them were temporarily hired by the latter and did not belong to Jiang Pictures. This was very normal. Otherwise, with the scale and strength of Jiang Pictures, it would be impossible to support so many people. Even large film companies would pay attention to the number of employees. In the film and television industry, there were specialized agencies to solve this problem. Once a film company needed people for a new project, whether it was actors, scriptwriters, cameramen, recording artists, or even directors, they could be hired through an agency. This saved money to a great extent. There were 5 people who suddenly proposed to quit the crew. They were all assistants and handymen in the logistics department. They were not important people and the crew could still operate without them. However, this was undoubtedly a dangerous signal. The dead cat incident on the set had caused the hearts of the crew of A Chinese Ghost Story to become very unstable. The filming plan was facing a serious situation. But it was not over yet. In the afternoon, the car that the crew had parked in the parking lot of the film and television city had its tires punctured, and all 4 tires were punctured. Zhang Xiaofeng had brought people to buy lunch boxes in this car yesterday and at noon. The intention of the saboteur was very obvious. Call the police. Lu Qin said to Chen Wenxiang, complain to the film and television city's management committee again. Lu Qin could still tolerate the dead cat being thrown at the set in the morning, but now he could not take it anymore. He knew very well that neither calling the police nor complaining would solve the problem. Even if the troublemakers were caught, the punishment would not be severe. They would be released after a few days in jail and they could continue to cause damage. Moreover, it was still unknown whether they could find the culprit. This was not a criminal case. As long as Hong Hua's side continued to harass them, it would be enough to make the entire production team restless. They would not be able to focus on filming. The most disgusting thing about these gangs was that they could still achieve their goals without resorting to violent means of killing. In the face of such trouble, if the crew did not have strong enough connections, they would have no choice but to submit, pay protection fees, or share the profits to avoid the disaster. Lu Qin had also thought of spending money to avoid disaster, but the other party wanted a foot after taking an inch. Things definitely wouldn't end well. Calling the police and filing a complaint was to show that he would never bow down. Chen Wenxiang nodded. I'll deal with it right away, but, he hesitated for a moment before saying, but without direct evidence, we'd better not accuse Hong Hua. Even if you used your toes to think, everyone could figure out that this was done by Hong Hua. However, knowing was one thing, pointing it out to the police and the management of the film studio was another. Without evidence, the other party would definitely sue them for defamation. Nowadays, these gangs had learned from the lessons of their predecessors. When they started companies, factories, and industries, they would hire lawyers to act as amulets. They were very good at using legal means to achieve their goals. Hong Hua might even be waiting for the crew to file a complaint against them. Chen Wenxiang's explanation was an eye-opener for Lu Qin. He didn't know that the underworld nowadays could be played like this. However, at this point he couldn't back down. Chen Wenxiang had just taken out his phone to call the police when his phone suddenly rang. He picked up the phone and said a few words. His expression suddenly changed. The other party hung up very quickly. What's wrong? Lu Qin keenly sensed that something was wrong. He immediately asked, did something happen again? Chen Wenxiang nodded with a bitter smile and replied, Lu Jiahui is not acting anymore. He quit the crew. Lu Jiahui was the actor who played the role of Grandma Tree Spirit. He was a local of Xiangjiang and had played countless roles in the past few decades. He was quite famous for playing villains. Lu Qin had seen him many times when he watched Xiangjiang movies. The cast of A Chinese Ghost Story could be said to be weak. Lu Jiahui was also considered a small star. Since Lu Jiahui didn't have any scenes in the past 2 days, he wasn't on the set. However, it was obvious that he knew what had happened here. That was why he took the initiative to quit. This kind of veteran actor was usually very trustworthy. If his reputation was ruined in this industry, then no crew would be willing to hire him. It was equivalent to destroying his own rice bowl. If it wasn't for the great pressure, Lu Jiahui definitely wouldn't break the contract like this. Motherf asterisk her. The more Chen Wenxiang thought about it, the angrier he got. He couldn't help but curse. This original actor was really a grandma. Lu Qin was almost amused by Chen Wenxiang's curse. Wasn't Lu Jiahui hired by Jieyang? This role was fought over by Jieyang Pictures during the negotiation. Now that Lu Jiahui broke the contract, it was also a slap in the face to Jieyang Pictures. How could Jieyang remain indifferent? Chen Wenxiang smiled bitterly. It was Jieyang's people who informed me. Then there was no turning back. Lu Qin also had the urge to curse. He suppressed the anger in his heart and said in a deep voice, Uncle Chong, don't call the police. Please ask Uncle Ma to come over. Chen Wenxiang was stunned. He immediately understood what Lu Qin meant. Lu Jiaowei ran away. If the other more important supporting actor, Ma Rongjin, also ran away, then the crew would be paralyzed. It would be a complete mess. Compared to Lu Jiaowei, who was doing well in the industry, Ma Rongjin, who had always been a flop, was probably even weaker. Therefore at this time Lu Qin couldn't panic. He had to find a way to stabilize the crew's morale. The first step was to ensure that an important role like Ma Rongjin wouldn't go wrong. Ma Rongjin soon arrived. Ma Rongjin was also a supporting actor, and he also didn't have any scenes to shoot. Ma Rongjin was different from Lu Jiaowei, who disappeared after the opening ceremony. He had been with the crew the whole time and even helped with some chores. Maybe because he had lost it before, Ma Rongjin knew how to cherish this opportunity. He didn't brag but used his actions to show his efforts. "Young Master Lu, you wanted to see me?" Lu Qin asked directly. "Uncle Ma, did anyone ask you to leave the crew?" Chapter 490. Although Ma Rongjin was in dire straits now, he had been in the entertainment circle for many years and was experienced. Therefore he understood what was going on when he heard Lu Qin's words. "No," he replied firmly, "even if there is, I will never leave the cast unless young Master Lu asks me to." Lu Qin and Chen Wenxiang looked at each other and saw a trace of relief in each other's eyes. If Ma Rongjin also ran away, it would be really troublesome. Lu Qin was relieved and said with a smile, "That's good. Don't worry, I definitely won't let you go. Let's work hard together and make this movie a good one." The character of this veteran actor was undoubtedly trustworthy. Ma Rongjin asked with concern, "Master Lu, does Lu Jiaowei not want to make the movie?" Lu Qin and Chen Wenxiang were both stunned. The latter asked in surprise, "Brother Rongjin, how did you know?" "This man?" Ma Rongjin's eyes flashed a touch of disdain and said, "He is not only cunning but also extremely afraid of death. If someone casually threatens him, he will definitely shrink back. There is nothing strange about it." It could be seen that Ma Rongjin despised Lu Jiaowei very much. They probably had some grievances in the past. Lu Qin didn't care about their gossip. He cared about Ma Rongjin himself. "Uncle Ma, aren't you afraid that Xingyi Hall is behind Honghua?" Ma Rongjin smiled and said, "What am I afraid of? My life is worthless now. If Xingyi Hall makes trouble for me, then I will risk my life to fight with them. The current Hong Kong is not the Hong Kong of decades ago. The Jiang family can't cover the sky in Hong Kong." Ma Rongjin said frankly, "If Xingyi Hall makes trouble for me in the past, maybe I will shrink back like Lu Jiaowei. But now I'm really not afraid of anything. My wife and children have long run away, and I am the only one left at home. If they are not afraid of causing public anger, then they can do whatever they want. If Jiang Qinghua dares to ruin my life, I will dare to lie in front of his father's door with my mother. Let's see who will lose face." Lu Qin was a little speechless, but he was finally relieved about Ma Rongjin. "Still, you have to pay attention to your safety. Be careful of their dirty tricks." Ma Rongjin smiled. "Young Master Lu, I don't think they will chase me away. I don't have a good reputation in the industry. Box office poison." Lu Qin suddenly remembered Ma Rongjin's nickname and laughed involuntarily. Ma Rongjin sighed and said, "Actually, when encountering such a situation, the best solution is to find a big shot. Unfortunately, I don't have any face now. I'm sorry that I can't help you." "You can't say that." Lu Qin shook his head and said, "Uncle Ma, you're helping me by insisting on staying in the crew." Although the crew was facing constant troubles, the filming work could not be interrupted because of this, otherwise the loss would be great. Lu Qin did not hold back any of those who chose to quit the cast. Anyone who wanted to leave could leave. Nothing that was forced would not be sweet. As for Lu Jiaowei, he was invited by Jieyang Pictures. Naturally, Jieyang Pictures would give an explanation. That night, Zhou Yi, the boss of Jieyang Pictures, called Lu Qin again. Through a middleman, Honghua gave a settlement condition. "Buying shares is a must," Zhou Yi said over the phone. His voice sounded very tired and weak. "As for how much shares, we need to sit down and discuss it. The middleman's bottom line is no less than 35%. Honghua will set up a new film company to participate in the shooting and distribution of the new film as the main shareholder. They wanted at least 35% of the film shares." The last bit of hope in Lu Chen's heart was gone. These gangs and societies were so greedy that giving them even 1% wasn't a good idea. But he still listened to Zhou Yi patiently. In addition, Honghua suggested that they choose someone to be the director and producer. The male and female leads can remain the same. Well, Lu Qin could not listen to it anymore. The most important members of a film crew would always be the director and producer. Sometimes the two might be one, but most of the time, they jointly controlled the fate of the film. Honghua not only wanted to buy shares, but also wanted to take away the director and producer. It was equivalent to controlling the life and death of a Chinese ghost story in their own hands. How could Lu Qin agree? Boss Zhou, you don't have to say any more. I will not agree to any of their conditions. If they insist on making trouble, then I can only accompany them to the end. Lu Qin's answer was resolute, with unshakable determination and confidence. That was never to bow down. Zhou was not surprised. If it were him, he would rather break up the business than agree to such bad conditions. That was equivalent to directly kneeling on the ground. After thinking for a moment, he still said his guess. Young Master Lu, I think their ultimate goal is not to ask for shares, but to drive you away from Xiangjiang. Zhou put himself in Honghua's shoes. If he was interested in the movie, a Chinese ghost story, and wanted to take it by force, the time to choose to make trouble was not now. The best time was when the filming was halfway through. At that time, Lu Qin had invested a large amount of money. If he withdrew, the loss would be great and he might give in. Now that he had just started, he wanted to buy shares in the director and producer. Did he really think others were idiots? Therefore, Zhou suspected that Honghua's purpose was to drive Lu Qin away. Lu Qin felt that Zhou guess was very reasonable, but he was very puzzled. What good will it do for Honghua if I leave? Lu Qin came to Xiangjiang to shoot a movie, so there should be no conflict with Honghua, who was currently in the food and beverage business. Moreover, he had previously ordered box lunches from the latter to do business. Zhou said, I don't know, but I know that Jiang Qinghua is a very smart person. He doesn't do business that loses money, and he won't waste time and energy on things that harm others without benefiting himself. So as to what the truth is, I can only find a way to find out. Be careful here. After ending the call with Zhou, Lu Qin thought for a moment and dialed Wang Yong's cell phone. After so many things had happened, although the crew had already called the police and complained to the management of the film city, the safety of the crew still had to be maintained by themselves. Therefore, he asked Wang Yong to personally stay on the set to look after the equipment at night. After giving a few serious instructions to Wang Yong, Lu Qin went to bed to rest. The next morning he was woken up from his sleep by the urgent ringing of the phone. Opening his eyes, Lu Qin immediately turned over and grabbed the landline on the bedside table. He put the phone to his ear. Hello. Wang Yong's excited voice came from the phone. Young Master Lu, we caught the two guys who caused trouble. What? Lu Qin was suddenly completely awake. Chapter 491. In the early morning of yesterday, someone threw the dead cat into the Fein Temple set, which made Wang Yong angry. Lu Qin did not blame the people in charge of guarding the set because the set was so big, and without any monitoring equipment, the people who stayed behind could only guard the important equipment, and could not prevent this kind of malicious behavior. But Wang Yong felt ashamed. Because the people guarding the set were several members of the Lu family squad, who were also his subordinates, he felt that he was responsible for such a thing happened. Wang Yong was not an ordinary person. He had been in the army for many years and had already honed an extraordinary skill, and also mastered special military skills, but after retiring from the army, there had been no place for him to use them. Now that such a situation had happened, Wang Yong certainly could not tolerate a few people from the gangs, who unscrupulously caused trouble under his eyes, so last night he personally led a team to guard the set. And after discussing with Lu Qin, he also bought a set of simple local monitoring equipment and set it up. Once this former elite in the army became serious, a few petty thieves were completely not enough. They were also caught in the early morning of this day, and they were caught red-handed. Just two little yellow-haired boys. Wang Yong said proudly, I used a little means to deal with them and they all confessed. They are the henchmen of Honghua, usually responsible for delivering lunch boxes and so on. They sent us 2 dead dogs and a bucket of dog blood trying to pollute our set. Not only did they throw the dead cat away, but they also sprinkled dog blood. Lu Qin finally saw the shamelessness and filth of this kind of gang. He asked, did they get hurt? Xiangjiang was a place of law, and it was the Anglo-American legal system, so there were a lot of lawyers and trivial matters often had to be solved in court. Wang Yong did not call the police immediately after catching the troublemakers, but first vented his anger. If they really got hurt, then things would be very troublesome. At that time, Honghua would definitely use this as a pretext, and the crew would become unreasonable. Wang Yong smiled and said, don't worry about my methods. Even if I send these 2 guys to the hospital for an MRI scan, they definitely won't be able to detect any injuries. Originally, I had prepared more than 10 methods, but in the end, before I even finished 2 of them, they already confessed everything with snot and tears on their faces. Lu Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry because it sounded like Wang Yong wasn't satisfied. He said, "You've done a good job. I'll come over now and call the police when I arrive." If he was present when the police arrived, he should be able to put some pressure on them. After thinking about it, Lu Chen gave Zhou Yi a call. In the end, it was Zhou Yi's assistant who picked up the phone, saying that the boss was still resting. Lu Chen did not mind and informed the other party about the situation at the set. Then he hurriedly washed up and contacted Chen Wenxiang to rush to Lion Rock together. Chen Wenxiang was very happy when he found out that the culprit had been caught red-handed. He said that he had finally gotten his revenge. He believed that this time, Honghua's side would have to suffer a little in the lawsuit and reduce the pressure on the production team. However, to the 2 of them's surprise, Wang Yong made a call halfway through the car. Just a few minutes ago, a group of people wearing Honghua's restaurant uniforms appeared at Fein Temple. They blocked the entrance of the set and clamored for the crew to release the culprit. "How arrogant!" Lu Chen replied without hesitation. "Call the police immediately and guard the set. Don't let them break in. Uncle Chang and I will be there in 10 minutes. Wang Yong said, "Don't worry, the people here are all good. Unless they use their weapons, I can guarantee that they won't be able to break in even if there are twice as many of them." "Then it's all up to you." After ending the call with Wang Yong, Lu Chen said to Chen Wenxiang, "Uncle Chang, inform the management of the studio." To be honest, Lu Chen was very dissatisfied with the management of Lion Rock Studio. It was impossible for them to be completely unaware of such a problem that the crew of A Chinese Ghost Story had encountered, but they pretended to be deaf and dumb. Lu Chen would never believe that there was no internal collusion between Honghua and the management of the studio. It was nothing more than taking advantage of the fact that he was an outsider. But even though he was angry, Lu Chen still had to do what he had to do. No matter what the management's reaction was, he had to clearly express his attitude. The Mercedes-Benz MPV carrying the 2 of them sped up. Zhang Xiaofeng displayed his driving skills without saying a word. The distance that would normally have taken 10 minutes to complete took only 5 minutes to reach the destination. After parking the car in the parking lot, the 3 of them hurried to the set. From afar, they saw a group of people surrounding the gate of Fein Temple, confronting Wang Yong and several crew members. The police had not arrived yet, and the people from the studio were nowhere to be seen. However, there were a few paparazzi sneaking around with cameras in their hands. They were probably hired by Honghua. There were about 20 or 30 people surrounding the set. They were all very young and wore blue uniforms with the Honghua restaurant logo printed on them. They looked very arrogant. "Release them immediately, or don't blame us for being rude. Brothers, the mainlanders have detained our brothers. Can we agree? Release them. Apologize. Pay up." "What bullsh** T crew is this? You snatched our jobs and captured our people. I'll fight you today. Go back to the mainland." Most of these people from Honghua were barehanded, but there were also a few who were holding baseball bats. As early as the 70s and 80s, when the gangs in Xiangjiang were at their strongest, the fights between the major triad organizations were extremely fierce, and people were often killed. At that time, machetes and daggers were a necessity for everyone. Pistols and even rifles had appeared in gang fights. At that time, ordinary people in Xiangjiang felt insecure. They were afraid that they would be stabbed or eaten by a stray bullet while walking on the street. Some gang members were simply unreasonable and dared to kill people over trivial matters. This kind of social reality was also reflected in Xiangjiang's movies and TV series. Gangster movies were popular at that time, and the protagonists in the movies were often members of gangs. The deliberate whitewashing and flattering of the protagonists affected countless young people in Xiangjiang. After several severe attacks, these violent gangs had already disappeared. Later on, the rising gangs would put on a layer of legal armor and would no longer fight and kill at every turn. Moreover, the Xiangjiang government had extremely strict control over firearms and controlled knives. Once violated, they would be severely punished. No one dared to openly go on the streets. But a dog can't stop eating *T. As the most direct and effective method, the factor of violence had long been deeply ingrained in the bones of the gang members. Many times they would still flaunt their strength. Of course, controlled knives and firearms were definitely not allowed to be used. If they were used, it would be a taboo. Therefore, the hard and easy-to-use baseball bats became the best weapon for these people. It was not against the law to hold a baseball bat, but when they hit people, they were still fierce and full of deterrence. When Lu Chen appeared on the set with Chen Wenxiang and Zhang Xiaofeng, someone immediately noticed him. Chapter 492. That's him. He's the celebrity boss from the mainland. Stop him, don't let him run away. Let our brothers come out. Hurry up. Several of Hong Hua's men recognized Lu Chen at the first moment. As if they had found a treasure, they quickly surrounded Lu Chen while shouting and shouting. Each of them had an ominous glint in their eyes. One of them was a young man with a flat-top haircut. There was a dark blue tattoo on his neck and he held a wooden baseball bat in his hand. He rushed to Lu Chen at the fastest speed. As he rushed, he cursed, "Bastard, how dare you detain my brother? Go to hell." At the same time, he raised the baseball bat in his hand high. The bat was shiny and reflective in the morning sun, which was very deterrent. Seeing that the situation was not good, Zhang Xiaofeng immediately rushed to protect Lu Chen. Lu Chen reached out to stop him and said in a deep voice, "You protect Uncle Chang. I'll deal with him." While speaking, Lu Chen did not stop and rushed to the other side without showing any weakness. The young man with a flat-top haircut was very surprised. In his impression, a delicate and noble star artist like Lu Chen is the most timid in the face of violence and intimidation. He believes that as long as he puts on a good posture, he can definitely scare Lu Chen to the point of wetting his pants. Then his goal would be achieved. However, what the young man with a flat-top haircut never expected was that in the face of him and the baseball bat in his hand, not only did Lu Chen not show the slightest fear, but he also put on a posture to fight. This is not right. The young man with a flat-top haircut didn't really want to hit Lu Chen, because if he really hurt someone, especially a celebrity from the mainland, the consequences would be absolutely serious. Even his boss might not be able to protect him. The Hong Kong government's crackdown on violence was very strict, not to mention that the victim was a celebrity. However, if the young man with a flat-top haircut chose to retreat at this time, he would lose his face. With so many brothers watching, he would become a joke in the martial arts world if it was spread out. As a member of a club, his head could be chopped off and his blood could flow, but he could not afford to lose face. At this moment, several thoughts flashed through the young man's mind. In the end, the violent emotions hidden deep in his heart prevailed. He growled and swung the baseball bat at Lu Chen's left shoulder. Otherwise, it would be no problem to smash someone's head to smack them to death. Moreover, he still reserved some strength. As long as he could successfully scare Lu Chen, it would be enough to let Lu Chen suffer a little. This was also specially instructed by the people above. The young man with the crew cut could be considered a smart person, but unfortunately he was facing Lu Chen. When he saw the other party brandishing his weapon, Lu Chen suddenly sped up. His body rushed forward like an arrow shot from a bow, like a ferocious beast pouncing on its prey. In the blink of an eye, he collided with the young man with the crew cut. At the moment of collision, Lu Chen turned his body sideways and rammed the back of his shoulder into his opponent's chest. Bang! Accompanied by a dull, low sound, the young man with the crew cut flew out involuntarily, as if he had been hit head-on by a raging bull. He collided with a few of his companions behind him, and instantly became a gourd rolling on the ground. Ah! Screams, cries of pain, and the sound of bodies colliding intertwined, causing the other people of Hong Hua to be stunned. What was going on? The result of the collision was too unexpected, and they felt that their common sense had been subverted. Many of these street gangsters chased after celebrities, but they never thought that the awe-inspiring actors and actresses in the movies and television had real skills. For people like them, if they had a machete in hand, it would not be a problem for them to chop down 18 or 19 kings and queens. The young man with the crew cut was a small leader of Hong Hua, and he was a very combative member of the club. Although he did not hold a machete in his hand, his baseball bat was not to be trifled with. However, in just one round, the young man with the crew cut was KO'd by Lu Chen, and even the others were unlucky. This did not make sense. Don't even think about escaping. While everyone was still in a daze, Wan Yong, who was stationed at the entrance of the film set, rushed out with a group of crew members. They didn't have many people and there were only a mere 8 of them including Wan Yong. But when faced with an opponent that was 3 to 4 times their number, they were like a group of ferocious tigers that had descended the mountain and brazenly slaughtered their way into a pack of wolves. Last night, most of the Lu family squad that Lu Chen had arranged to stay at the film set finally revealed their sharp fangs. All the members of the Lu family squad were retired military personnel, and they were good at grappling in close combat. Furthermore, they had undergone strict training, and were on a completely different level from Hong Hua's gangsters. Their previous forbearance was only to wait for Lu Chen's arrival. Now that Lu Chen had personally made a move, of course Wan Yong would not just stand by and watch. He immediately commanded the Lu family squad to move out. The battle from the very beginning showed a one-sided trend. Although Honghua's gangsters had the advantage in numbers, in terms of organization, action and combat effectiveness, they could not be compared to the former at all. Therefore in an instant they threw away their helmets and abandoned their armor. The Liu family squad led by Wan Yong captured a gangster and used the plastic buckles that they carried with them to tie up his hands. There were also gangsters who tried to resist, but the result of resistance was even worse. They were punched heavily in the stomach or thrown to the ground, suffering greatly. This was the result of the Liu family squad deliberately controlling their strength. Otherwise, if they were to fight to the death, half of them would be completely lying on the ground within half a minute, never to get up again. The few who dared to resist were all defeated. Seeing their companions being taken care of one by one, the others were scared out of their wits. They threw down the sticks in their hands and ran away like rats. It was really embarrassing to the extreme. At this moment, the paparazzi who were squatting not far away were extremely excited. They raised their respective long and short cameras and took pictures of the scene, for fear of missing a wonderful scene. Of course, Lu Qin saw it, but he had no intention of interfering. Today's counterattack was completely justified, and he wasn't afraid even if it was brought to court. What he needed was a hearty victory like this to establish his prestige and reputation. Otherwise, he would only be tired of dealing with Honghua's endless sinister tactics and be at a complete disadvantage. When it was time to make a move, Lu Qin would rather go back to the mainland if he had to be cautious and indecisive in every matter. Woo woo woo, the heart-palpitating sound of police sirens came from afar, telling everyone that the police had arrived. Interestingly, the gangsters who were put on the ground breathed a sigh of relief. Since the police were here, they were not in any danger. In fact, it was not only the police who showed up, but also the people from the Film City's management organization. The ruins of Fane Temple, located in a remote corner of Lion Rock Hill, had never been as lively as it was now. While Chen Wenxiang was negotiating with the police and the management of Film City, Lu Qin made a second call to Zhou Yi. Chapter 493. This time it was Zhou Yi who answered the phone. He said in a deep voice, "Young Master Lu, I'm on my way. I'll be there in a few minutes at most." Zhou Yi was a very shrewd businessman, and in many cases shrewdness could also be interpreted as cunning. When it came to dealing with Honghua, Zhou Yi was very cunning and was unwilling to share the pressure for Lu Qin. But now his attitude was impeccable. As a well-known businessman in Xiangjiang, Zhou Yi's strength and status could not be compared with the top tycoons. He was not an ordinary rich man and he had a considerable status. His coming to the set in person was undoubtedly another sign of support for Lu Qin. Lu Qin was too lazy to guess what Zhou Yi was thinking. He first briefly described what had just happened on the phone, and finally said to Zhou Yi straightforwardly, "Boss Zhou, I'm going to hold a media conference immediately to clarify the truth of the matter to the media and the public, and denounce Honghua's bad behavior at the same time. I want to know how many influential media can you help me invite now?" Lu Qin emphasized the word influential. He believed that Zhou Yi understood what he meant. Of course, Zhou Yi understood that Lu Qin was going to fight with Honghua. And if Zhou Yi came forward to invite important media reporters, it meant that he was firmly tied to Lu Qin's chariot. It was impossible for him to waver like before, and he had to clearly support Lu Qin. Young people nowadays were really amazing. Zhou Yi was silent and also thinking. However, Lu Qin did not let him delay and said very bluntly, "Boss Zhou, if you can't do it, then you don't have to come." This was Lu Qin's last ultimatum. If he wanted to continue to cooperate, then he had to show a cooperative attitude. Otherwise everyone would break up. Zhou Yi sighed and said, "Give me half an hour." Of course he did not want to directly go against the Jiang family. A moment of pleasure would not help his business at all, and it would cause unnecessary trouble instead. Zhou Yi did not like trouble. What he liked was to earn money easily and quickly. However, in the current Xiangjiang, it was already very difficult to make money. The competition in the industry was extremely fierce. Even 1% of the profit might require 100% of the effort, and even a little bit of effort would cause one to lose everything. That was why Zhou Yi had acquired Jiang Pictures to invest in multiple areas. He did not want to put all his eggs in one basket. Zhou Yi was also very optimistic about Lu Qin's movie project. Based on his serious understanding of Lu Qin, he realized that this young man who had debuted in the country less than 2 years ago, had already created many miracles. Those who followed Lu Qin, trusted Lu Qin, and supported Lu Qin had all received generous rewards. Because of this understanding, when faced with a choice, Zhou Yi placed all his chips on Lu Qin. Of course he also had a trump card. A smile finally appeared on Lu Chen's face, and his tone became gentle. An hour is fine. The press conference is scheduled to be held at 9:30. I have prepared the materials here. After making up his mind, Zhou Yi immediately showed the decisiveness that a real businessman should have. Okay. The matter of holding the press conference was officially settled. As soon as Lu Chen ended the call with Zhou Yi, Chen Wenxiang came to him with a policeman. This is our boss, Mr. Lu Chen. Chen Wenxiang introduced. This is Sergeant Fong from the Kowloon Tang Police Station. Hello, Sergeant Fong. Lu Chen immediately took the initiative to extend his hand to him. Thank you for your hard work. Sergeant Fong was a tall and thin middle-aged man. He shook hands with Lu Chen and said, Hello, Mr. Lu Chen. The Lion Rock Film and Television City is within the jurisdiction of our police station. It is our duty to protect the safety of the filming crew. It's a pity that such a thing happened. We will increase the intensity of our patrols in the future. Lu Chen said with a smile, Thank you. Sergeant Fong nodded. His eyes swept over Wan Yong and the other members of the Lu family squad, and he said casually, The people in your crew are very good at martial arts. Was more than good. Of course, Sergeant Fong was very clear about the background of the mastermind of the disturbance, Hong Hua. He had even heard rumors that Hong Hua was dealing with a crew from the mainland, so he had been mentally prepared for what would happen today. But what he didn't expect was that Hong Hua, who came to make trouble, actually suffered such a big loss. More than 20 people were subdued on the spot, and they were so fast that he could only clean up the mess when he arrived with his team. This made Sergeant Fong vigilant. In the 70s and 80s, there was a special force in Hong Kong called the Big Circle Gang. Its members were all from the mainland and their methods were particularly cruel. Later they were the most severely suppressed. When Sergeant Fong was a child he had a deep impression of the Big Circle Gang. The powerful members of the Lu family squad made him have some subtle associations. Lu Chen said with a smile, They are martial arts masters in charge of staying on the set. They are all retired soldiers. Fortunately they are. Lu Chen's words were meaningful. Hearing the word soldier, Sergeant Fong's pupils suddenly shrank, and his expression instantly froze. The soldiers of the Republic had a special deterrent power to the people of Hong Kong. After Hong Kong returned to the mainland, there had always been a garrison in Hong Kong. Later, when the Hong Kong government took action to crack down on the evil forces, the garrison participated in it, and their outstanding performance made the whole world look at them. But Sergeant Fong reacted very quickly and immediately said with a smile, No wonder, no wonder. But we have to bring these troublemakers back to the police station for interrogation. Please believe that the police will definitely deal with them impartially. Imperceptibly, he was a little more polite to Lu Chen. Thank you, Sergeant Fong. Lu Chen shook hands with him again. Then I'll leave it to the police to deal with. Because the incident was a little big, the Kowloon Tong police station sent a number of police cars, including a riot police car. There were more than 20 police officers, so when they brought the troublemakers back, it was quite a big scene. Probably because the news had spread, there were more and more reporters around the set. Many paparazzi came out of nowhere and kept taking pictures of the police and the arrested Hong Chinese. Some reporters even went straight to Lu Chen. Mr. Lu Chen, I'm a reporter from the Kowloon Express. Can you tell me what exactly happened? Lu Chen stopped Zhang Xiaofeng, who was about to stop the reporters, and said, Our crew will hold a media conference here at 9:30. All reporters are welcome to come and interview. After saying that, he ignored the reporters who were trying to continue asking questions and turned around to return to the set. Lu Chen, Mr. Lu Chen. The other reporters who had just surrounded them could only see Lu Chen's back as he left. Chapter 494. At 9:30 a.m. on November 30th, the temporary media conference of the cast of A Chinese Ghost Story was held at the former site of the Fane Temple, which was the movie set. The media conference was held by Lu Chen Studio and Jiayang Pictures. In addition, the Lion Rock Film City Administration also sent a representative to the scene. The media invited to the scene included ATV, Ming Pao, Hong Kong Daily, Polo Daily, Entertainment News, Kowloon Radio Station. Except for a portion of the reporters who had rushed over after receiving the news, most of the others were invited by Zhou Yi using his connections. Otherwise, the major media outlets would not be interested in reporting on the incident itself. Zhou Yi used this opportunity to show off his strength. The layout of the media conference was very simple. There were 2 long tables put together and covered with a cloth as a podium. The chairs that the reporters sat on were temporarily borrowed from the management of the film city, so it looked quite simple. However, there was a projection screen and projector set up behind the podium, which gave people a very different feeling. When it was time, there were about 30 media outlets at the scene with 40 to 50 reporters and photographers. The atmosphere at the scene was quite good, and it was not chaotic. Lu Qin and Zhou Yi were the first to take their seats, followed by Wan Xiaoquan, Chen Wenxiang, and then the representative of the Film City administration. Finally, a middle-aged woman with gold-rimmed glasses came out and sat on the outermost seat. After Chen Wenxiang sat down, he turned to ask Lu Qin, "Mr. Lu, shall we begin?" Lu Qin nodded seriously. "Okay." Chen Wenxiang coughed. He sat up straight and said into the microphone, "Welcome, friends from the media, to the media conference of the cast of A Chinese Ghost Story. Today, I have invited everyone here mainly to explain the bad things that have happened to our crew in the past few days." Chen Wenxiang had been in the industry for decades and was a true veteran. Although being a spokesman for the crew was not his job, he still did it well. His train of thought was very clear, and he told the ins and outs of the whole incident in detail. In the end, he said indignantly, "Xiangjiang is a legal society, but who would have thought that our crew would encounter such an encounter?" Honghua's bad behavior not only seriously affected the mood of the crew members, but also caused our shooting plan to be interrupted, causing great losses. So here we sincerely ask our friends in the media to uphold justice. As soon as Chen Wenxiang finished speaking, the reporters looked at each other. Many of the reporters present were not very clear about what had happened when they were sent over. They only knew that the crew of A Chinese Ghost Story had a conflict with someone. Only now did they have a basic understanding. However, this kind of thing did not seem to have much hype value, unless the production crew of A Chinese Ghost Story wanted to hype it up. They thought that he had understood and was prepared to give him some face and socialize casually. However, the reporters who had witnessed the conflict between the two sides had a lot of questions. Immediately, someone raised his hand and stood up, asking loudly, "Mr. Lu Qin, did you hire a security guard to protect the crew so that the situation could be settled quickly?" Chen Wenxiang moved the microphone in front of Lu Qin. Lu Qin replied calmly, "The people who subdued the troublemakers weren't the security guards I hired. They were members of the film crew and I brought them from the mainland." Lu family class? This term was quite fresh and many reporters were curious. A reporter asked, "Can you introduce the Lu family class in detail?" He had seen the power of the members of the Lu family class with his own eyes. Ordinary martial artists did not have such high combat power. Lu Qin smiled faintly and said, "The Lu family class is a martial arts class that I personally organized and trained. At present, there are a total of 12 members and a head coach. They are responsible for filming the action scenes and stunts involved in the film and TV series." Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lu Qin officially pushed out the Lu family class. Although the Lu family class was still unknown and did not have any works, Lu Qin believed that in a few years, everyone in the Chinese circle would know this name. In the face of the reporters' questions, Lu Qin's answers were always calm and composed. Even if the other party's questions were a little over the top, he would easily avoid the trap, leaving no loopholes for the other party to exploit. If that was all, it would definitely not be enough to form a public opinion attack. Fortunately, Lu Qin had prepared for it. After answering a reporter's question, Lu Qin said seriously, "In fact, as far as this matter itself is concerned, although our crew suffered a certain loss, I believe that with the police handling it, they will definitely be able to seek justice for us. There is no need to mobilize so many people to invite you here." First, he flattered the police a little, and then Lu Qin's words suddenly changed. Was it not to seek justice for himself through the media? The reporters present were stunned. They felt that what Lu Qin said was too hypocritical. If it was not that, then what was it? Lu Qin saw their looks in his eyes and the corners of his mouth curled up. He said calmly, "First, please watch a video. It was shot by the staff who stayed behind in our crew through the surveillance this morning." The screen and projector that were set up at the back were finally put to use. Under the control of the crew, the surveillance footage from this morning was quickly displayed in front of everyone's eyes. When the video was taken, it was already dawn. Coupled with the fact that the surveillance equipment was more advanced, the footage was very clear. Everyone could see two people sneaking around the set from outside. They were each holding a plastic bucket and a long plastic bag in their hands. From further away they could vaguely see that someone was responsible for keeping watch. The truth was soon revealed. One of them opened the bag, picked up a dog corpse inside and was about to throw it over the wall. However, at that moment, a few of the crew members rushed out and caught the two of them on the spot. The video froze there. Lu Chen turned around and said in a heavy tone, "What really angered me was not the bad behavior of Honghua towards our crew, but the fact that they didn't hesitate to kill small animals to achieve their own goals." As soon as he finished speaking, the scene on the screen instantly changed. Ah! There was a sudden scream from the scene. A few female reporters even closed their eyes as they couldn't bear to watch. What was displayed on the screen was a photo of a dead dog. The photo was very well taken, and it clearly captured the tragic state of the dog. Its body was covered in blood, and the dog's eyes were wide open with its tongue sticking out. There was a bloody hole on its neck that was pierced by a sharp blade. The zoomed-in close-up was very visually impactful. Chapter 495. Using dead cats and dogs to intimidate people was a common tactic used by the members of the gangs. In the past, when the people in the gangs lent money to the loan sharks, the first step was to hang a bloody dead cat on the other party's door, meaning that if they didn't pay the money, the poor cat would be the example. Ever since the triad organization in Xiangjiang was severely suppressed, the gangs and societies went from being in the light to being in the dark. Now the usury rarely used this kind of method to collect debts. They changed to splashing red paint on the door of the house and painting big characters. The purpose was the same. However, the method of throwing dead cats and dogs to intimidate people was not extinct, so the media reporters present knew what was going on at a glance. The crew of A Chinese Ghost Story had offended the people from Honghua and was harassed by them in retaliation. This was undoubtedly a very disgusting act. The problem was that the photo that appeared on the 100-inch projection screen was so horrifying that people would have nightmares at night. Therefore, the knowledgeable reporters couldn't help but exclaim in shock. The next moment, the picture displayed on the screen switched. It was also a very bloody picture and a bucket of dog blood. Lu Chen said in a deep voice, "Xiangjiang is a place of law and culture. Modern Xiangjiang people are civilized and cultured. When I was in the mainland, I heard that Hong Kong has corresponding protection regulations for small animals and pets. They even set up a pet protection association. Even a stray dog can be properly protected. However, I never thought that in broad daylight, someone would cruelly kill innocent cats and dogs for a moment of pleasure. This is simply intolerable." At this time, the purpose of Lu Chen's media conference was already clear. Chen Wenxiang, the representative of the crew, has already told the ins and outs of the incident, so Lu Chen did not elaborate any further. He also did not shout at the top of his lungs to condemn the harassment of the crew by Honghua, but focused his condemnation on the other party's cruelty to small animals. It was simply a strange peek. None of the reporters present were fools. If they still could not figure out Lu Chen's intentions, they might as well quit the industry because there was no future for them if they were too stupid. If Lu Chen focused on the conflict between the crew and Honghua and hoped to use the media to put pressure on them, it would not have much of an effect. The media was very shrewd and realistic. Zhou Yi had used his connections to get the reporters from the television stations and newspapers to rush over to attend the communication meeting. He had already done his best. The next step was to get many media outlets to create momentum at the same time. That would require a lot of energy. In addition, the news had to be explosive and a hot topic that could be hyped up. The incident of the Chinese Ghost Story crew being defamed was clearly far from meeting the standard. The most important thing was that Lu Chen came from the mainland. With the common xenophobic complex of many people in Hong Kong, when the crew he represented had a conflict with the local community, it was estimated that many people would gloat and be more willing to watch the show. After the reporters went back, they would give a corner of the newspaper the size of a piece of tofu. It was already very nice to say a few words lightly, and it would not have much effect on public opinion. The situation now was completely different. For this, Lu Chen turned sideways. His eyes fell on the middle-aged woman on the far right of the rostrum, and then he continued to say, "I specially sincerely invite Ms. Feng Jinyun, the deputy chairman of the Little Pet Protection Association of Xiangjiang. Let's welcome Ms. Feng to speak." This middle-aged woman was well-dressed. She had a rich face and a cold expression. She gave people the feeling that she was not to be trifled with. Just now, everyone did not pay attention to her. They thought she was one of the members of the crew, but they did not expect her to be the deputy chairman of the Little Pet Protection Association. The full name of the Little Pet Protection Association was the Xiangjiang Small Animals/Pets Protection Association. It was established in the 1990s. As a non-governmental public welfare organization, although it did not have a long history, it had a great influence in Xiangjiang. Because the members of the Little Pet Protection Association covered the upper, middle and lower levels of society, many celebrities and star artists were volunteers of the Little Pet Protection Association. The wives of many senior government officials in Xiangjiang held important positions in the Little Pet Protection Association. Its potential power could be said to be huge. In recent years, many cases of animal abuse and pet abuse broke out in Xiangjiang, which once became a hot topic in society. Among them, the Little Pet Protection Association could not be separated from it. What made people afraid was that some members of the Little Pet Protection Association protected cats and dogs to an almost abnormal degree. If anyone violated their taboo, it would be really big trouble. There was once a white-collar worker who killed a stray dog. After the incident was exposed, he was besieged by the people of the Little Pet Protection Association. Not only did he lose his job, but he was also forced to kneel at the dog's funeral, which made a lot of noise. Therefore, in the face of the Little Pet Protection Association, which had a mixed reputation, many people could not afford to provoke it and could only hide from it. Even the dog meat stalls in Xiangjiang disappeared, and famous dishes such as dragon and tiger fight also disappeared from the menu. Lu Qin actually invited this great god to attack his opponent. Everyone had a feeling of absurdity in their hearts. Did he have to be so ruthless? But they had to admit that his counterattack was extremely brilliant. Even the underworld could not afford to offend the Little Pet Protection Association. This was an extra-large hornet's nest, which was directly smashed by Lu Qin in Honghua's face, and the evidence was irrefutable. Sure enough, as soon as Miss Feng Jinyun opened her mouth, she scolded the people of Honghua. She was simply filled with righteous indignation, and she kept scolding for a full 7 or 8 minutes. Her fighting power was so strong that it made people look at her. The reporters still had to listen patiently, because their superiors or the boss's wife might be a member of the Little Pet Protection Association, a volunteer, or a close friend of a member. In Xiangjiang, caring for small animals and pets was the right way of public opinion, and smart people would not do the opposite. As for those gangsters of Honghua, before they caught cats and dogs to torture and scare people, the circuit in their brain probably did not have the existence of the words, Little Pet Protection Association. However, these people would soon know how terrifying the existence of the Little Pet Protection Association was. Lu Qin, who gave the microphone to Feng Jinyun, looked solemn on the surface, but in his heart he was secretly amused. Before he came to Xiangjiang, Chen Fei told him a lot of things about Xiangjiang, including the mention of the Little Pet Protection Association. For example, if a movie or TV needed to use small animals as props, then it must be arranged through the Little Pet Protection Association. Otherwise, once someone complained about animal abuse, there would be a lot of trouble. The movie, A Chinese Ghost Story, did not need animal actors, but this morning when he came over and saw the 2 dead dogs, he immediately thought of the Little Pet Protection Association, so he inquired about the 24-hour hotline of the Little Pet Protection Association through the voice station and called it. As a result, the other party directly sent a deputy chairman. Chapter 496. The Little Pet Protection Association had the largest number of members among all the civil associations in Hong Kong. Therefore, in addition to the 2 bosses, the president and the chairman, there were 20 or 30 vice-chairmen and directors. People thought that a position with more people was worthless. Those who could be a director in the Little Pet Protection Association were basically celebrities and the families of high-ranking officials in Hong Kong. Needless to say, Feng Jinyun's identity was 100% capable of controlling the situation. The media reporters present knew how powerful she was. They didn't dare to explode or ask sensitive questions. They obediently completed the questioning process of Feng Jinyun so that they could write something when they went back. After Feng Jinyun scolded to her heart's content, she returned the microphone to Lu Qin. Lu Qin said, "Thank you very much, Miss Feng Jinyun. I think it is the responsibility of the whole society to protect small animals and pets. Similar tragedies should not happen again. So on behalf of the crew of A Chinese Ghost Story, I have decided." Speaking of this, Lu Chen's tone paused. The reporters were suddenly refreshed. Their professional sensitivity made them realize that new information was about to be revealed. They heard Lu Chen say, "Hand over the 2 dogs who unfortunately died to the Little Pet Protection Association to bury. In the name of Lu Chen Studio, I will personally donate 5 million to the Little Pet Protection Association as support for the cause of animal protection." 5 million. A lot of people were stunned. Hong Kong was economically developed and was the place where the world-renowned rich lived. It was not big news that celebrities often took out tens of millions or hundreds of millions to do charity donations. Compared with the amount of money donated by these rich people, 5 million was really nothing. But considering the current situation and the object of the donation was the Little Pet Protection Association, Lu Chen's generosity was really big. Lu Chen undoubtedly used this money to declare his determination and confidence to fight to the end with Honghua. In Hong Kong, it was recognized common sense not to fight with the rich. With the 5 million Lu Chen spent, at least he had made a big ally in the Little Pet Protection Association, so he definitely couldn't bear the loss in front of him. His opponent was in trouble. Many reporters were gloating for Honghua, sympathizing with the latter for choosing the wrong target and catching a big shark. How could someone who could casually take out 5 million be easy to deal with? They quickly recorded it down. These were all revelations that could be used in gossip news. More reporters rushed to stand up and ask questions. Mr. Lu Chen? Lu Chen saw the different performance of these media reporters before and after, and knew that he had made the right move. Although this 5 million donation was a little baffling, the effect it brought was undoubtedly very good. First of all, he had won the support of the Little Pet Protection Association, allowing him to defeat Honghua and the Jiang family behind it. Secondly, this sum of money could also be used as a marketing fee for A Chinese Ghost Story. It was normal to spend another 10 to 20 million on marketing for a movie with an investment of 30 million yuan. 5 million was not much. The most important thing was to let the media hype it up and let the general public in Hong Kong know about it. The money spent would be worth it. The media conference started at 9:30 and ended at 10:45. At the end of the meeting, all the reporters present received a red packet. This was the default rule. However, the reporters no longer cared about the thickness of the red envelope. They were all in a hurry to rush back to their respective places, ready to release the news as soon as possible. Of course, all the media received a copy of the information, which included the surveillance video and the high-definition photos that had been projected and played earlier. It could be said that there were pictures to prove the truth. Lu Chen and Zhou Yi sent Madame Feng Jinyun off together. Watching the other party's car leave, Zhou Yi's mood was extremely complicated. He had never thought that Lu Chen would actually play such a beautiful counterattack, turning Honghua's intimidation into a big handle that they could use against him. He reckoned that he would not be able to rest in peace even if he died. The final donation of 5 million made Zhou Yi look at him in a different light. He suddenly realized that he might have underestimated Lu Chen. His previous wavering stance was undoubtedly a mistake. Fortunately, he had come personally in the morning. Thinking quickly, Zhou Yi said decisively, "I will send someone to keep an eye on the media. You don't have to worry about the expenses. I guarantee that it will make the headlines of several newspapers." Making the headlines meant that he had to spend a lot of money. Lu Chen knew that Zhou Yi was expressing his attitude, so he smiled and said, "Then I'll leave it to you, Boss Zhou." Although Zhou Yi's previous performance was not very good, which made Lu Chen unhappy, the other party still chose to stand with him, so the cooperation between the two could still continue. The movie produced by Lu Chen Studio was inseparable from the support of the local film company. The 5 million plus the Little Pet Protection Association and the power of a few photos were quickly shown through the media. The first to leak the news were a few online media, and then there were photos and videos on Hong Kong's forums and blogs, which attracted the attention of many netizens. Especially the bloody and horrifying photos of the dead dog, it aroused the anger of many people. They all left comments online, condemning such inhumane behavior. And this was only the beginning. That night, ATV's Current Affairs channel was the first to report the incident on TV. The next day, Ming Pao, Hong Kong Daily, Polo Daily, and other important newspapers all published the same dog abuse news. Many small and medium-sized newspapers even made the headlines. Public opinion was in an uproar. The proportion of wealthy people in Hong Kong raising pets was very high, especially in the upper class. Those celebrities and rich wives would raise famous dogs and cats. Every year they would hold a pet beauty contest and the prize money was very high. Therefore, the pet industry in Hong Kong was a very profitable market. The influence of the Little Pet Protection Association had a wide base of people. So when the news of the killing of cats and dogs appeared again with the media adding fuel to the fire, it naturally caused a wave of public opinion. Could even be said to be a storm. The big newspapers still had a bit of professional ethics. They pixelated a few of the bloody pictures, but the smaller newspapers didn't have so much integrity. They directly published the original pictures, coupled with sensational bold and black headlines, and the effect was very good. The initiator of the incident, Honghua Restaurant, was like a big hornet's nest. That afternoon, the company's gate was surrounded by a group of indignant protesters. A few of the company's gangsters couldn't stand the abuse, and wanted to come out with baseball bats to drive the people away. As a result, before they could get out of the gate, They were attacked by rotten tomatoes and rotten eggs like raindrops and retreated awkwardly. In desperation, the person in charge of the company could only call the police for help. In the end, what they waited for was a summons from the police station, telling them to go to the police station to explain the situation. The dog abuse incident was blown out of proportion. Chapter 497. The Jiang family's mansion was located at 15 Changjia Road, Banshan District. The Banshan District of Hong Kong was a high-class residential area, located between the top of Taiping Mountain and the Central Ring. The location was excellent, and many buildings could directly overlook the busy Victoria Harbor. Therefore, it was favored by Hong Kong's rich and affluent immigrants. There were many historic villas and mansions in the Banshan District, and the Jiang family's mansion was one of them. It was built 50 years ago by the Jiang family's grandfather with all his savings. It was a combination of Chinese and Western style, and it was quite famous among the mansions in the Banshan District. The Jiang family had gone through ups and downs for decades, and there was a time when they were close to bankruptcy. However, the Jiang family had never thought of selling this valuable ancestral house, because this big house represented the roots of the Jiang family, and it was a symbol of the spirit of maintaining the unity of the family. Only those who lived in the Jiang family's mansion were qualified to lead the entire Jiang family. Jiang Qinghua moved out of the Jiang family's mansion 10 years ago. As an independent child, he rarely came back unless it was necessary. This was because this luxurious and imposing mansion always gave him an oppressive feeling, making it difficult for him to breathe. He didn't know how comfortable it was to live outside. But today he had no choice but to come because the owner of this mansion, his father, was in a terrible rage. The moment he stepped into the gate, Jiang Qinghua couldn't help but smile bitterly. If there was medicine for regret in the world, he would buy one even if it cost him tens of millions of yuan to turn back time to a week ago. In this way, Jiang Qinghua could prevent a tragedy from happening. As the boss of Honghua Restaurant, he had been under great pressure from all sides in the past few days. Jiang Qinghua really didn't expect that a small matter that he thought could be easily solved would turn into a storm of public opinion against him. The dog abuse incident had been hyped up in Hong Kong, and Honghua Company had been thrown a lot of rotten eggs and rotten tomatoes, forcing them to temporarily close down. And he himself had become a street rat. His fair-weather friends had all avoided him, and the beautiful women who often appeared around him had all disappeared. Everyone was afraid to avoid him. When did Jiang Qinghua fall into such a situation? Things happened too fast, and the opponent's means of stirring up public opinion was simply vicious. They took advantage of the negligence of his people and directly nailed Honghua Company to the pillar of shame and became the target of tens of thousands of people's curses. Now the fire had spread to the Jiang family. After all, his surname was Jiang. The more Jiang Qinghua thought about it, the angrier he felt. He couldn't help but pull the tie around his neck. "Young master's son, you're here?" The white-haired butler was waiting in the hall. He looked at Jiang Qinghua with a slightly reproachful gaze and said softly, "Young master is waiting for you in the study. He hasn't eaten today, so don't make him angry again." Jiang Qinghua had always been arrogant and unyielding, but in front of this senior statesman who had served the Jiang family for 50 years and had served forefather Jiang, Jiang Qinghua's grandfather, and was now serving Jiang Qinghua's father, Jiang Tai, Jiang Qinghua did not dare to be rude. "Ninth uncle, I know I was wrong." The old housekeeper smiled and said, "It's good that you know you were wrong. Quickly go in." Jiang Qinghua agreed and hurried to the study on the second floor. When he arrived at the study, Jiang Qinghua knocked on the door and entered. He saw his father sitting behind the desk. There were 7 or 8 people sitting on the left and right, including his 2 brothers and several executives of the Jiang group. Everyone's eyes fell on him. Some were sympathetic, some were condemning, some were hating him for failing to meet their expectations, and some were gloating. The ones who were gloating were undoubtedly his 2 brothers, who were outwardly harmonious but inwardly hostile. Seeing such a situation, Jiang Qinghua really wanted to retreat immediately. However, under Jiang Tai's fierce gaze, he had no choice but to bite the bullet and greet him. "Father, are you looking for me?" Jiang Tai snorted and said, "I know it's very difficult for me to invite you, the 3rd young master of the Jiang family. However, our Jiang family has reached a moment of life and death. You are also a member of the Jiang family. You can't just stay out of it, right?" Life and death. Jiang Qinghua was shocked. Was the matter so serious? Although the dog abuse incident by the Honghua employees had put him in a passive position, there was still a way to solve it. Anyway, the people who did it had been detained by the police. They could just directly plead guilty and pay compensation. As for the public opinion, as long as they were sincere in admitting their mistakes and spent more money to clear up the media, the situation would actually pass quickly. It was impossible for everyone to keep staring at this matter. The Little Pet Protection Association was a very big problem. However, the Jiang family could completely contact them through various connections. It was just a little bit of money and they would naturally be able to pass. No matter what, it was impossible to shake the foundation of the Jiang family. Father, I'm already thinking of a way to solve this matter. It's nothing more than lowering our heads and admitting our mistakes. Jiang Qinghua asked in disbelief. Do you want the Jiang family to pay with our lives just because you killed a few dogs? Jiang Tai's face was as still as water. He did not speak. A middle-aged man sitting on his left coughed and said, "Third young master, the 2 factories we invested in on the mainland were raided by the tax bureau yesterday. The financial accounts have been seized. We may face a heavy fine." In addition, the Environmental Protection Bureau also came today to conduct a major environmental inspection. This time Jiang Qinghua was really confused. Since the reform and opening up, the economic development level of the mainland had been growing rapidly. The huge market, rich products, and human resources had made the mainland the first choice for Xiangjiang entrepreneurs to invest. The top 10 richest people in Xiangjiang all had a lot of investments in the mainland. They relied on the mainland to earn astronomical wealth. Of course, the Jiang family would not miss the opportunity to make a fortune. As early as 20 years ago they began to follow the trend. A few years ago the Jiang's group, which had tasted the sweetness of the new wave of economic growth in the mainland, had invested in the construction of 2 new large-scale factories in the mainland. They had only recently put into production and sales. The 2 projects had hooked up most of the Jiang family's funds, including a bank loan of hundreds of millions. Seeing that they had begun to make profits, they had unexpectedly been raided by the tax bureau. Jiang Qinghua was very clear that the 2 large factories of his family in the mainland, whether it was tax or environmental protection, were 100% fishy. Once they were checked they would definitely be found out. This was actually a common problem of many Xiangjiang enterprises investing in the mainland. However, the local government often turned a blind eye to the economic development. As long as it was not too excessive they could get by. Moreover, the Jiang's group also paid great attention to the communication with the local government agencies. But now something had happened. Jiang Qinghua's intuition told him that the Jiang's group's investment projects being checked in the mainland could not be separated from the matter of him dealing with the small film crew. Although this association was very absurd and unbelievable, Jiang Qinghua did not think of other possibilities. Chapter 498. It's all your fault. Jiang Tai's thunderous roar made Jiang Qinghua's premonition come true. It really did have something to do with Lu Qin. But he couldn't understand and couldn't help saying, "How is that possible? I've had people investigate him. He's just a small-time artist from the mainland. He just debuted and he's already hooked up with a female star. Where did he get so much power?" Someone who could make the Tax Bureau and the Environmental Protection Bureau move out one after another to find trouble with a Hong Kong company with a huge investment was definitely not something an ordinary person in power could do. It must have been incited by the higher-ups of the mainland. Jiang Qinghua wasn't a fool. Before he dealt with the crew of a Chinese ghost story, he had learned about Lu Chen's situation. Now it seemed that he had most likely been deceived, or that the other party's background was too deep. At this moment, Jiang Qinghua felt really helpless. Jiang Tai sneered, "Investigated? You believe whatever people say. You don't even know that you've been played." Jiang Qinghua's heart jumped. His father was clearly implying something. He didn't deal with Lu Qin on his own. He had been incited and promised benefits. Jiang Tai obviously already knew the truth. And Jiang Tai's sarcasm and rebuke aroused Jiang Qinghua's rebellious mentality. "Not necessarily. Then Brother Dong. Brother my ass." Jiang Tai was furious. He grabbed the ashtray on the desk and smashed it at Jiang Qinghua. Bang. Accompanied by a muffled sound, Jiang Qinghua's forehead was smashed by the crystal ashtray, and dark red blood immediately flowed down. His body swayed but he actually endured it without making a sound. The rest of the people present were all startled. Even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs. Seeing his son's miserable condition, Jiang Tai, who had impulsively attacked, more or less regretted it. He sat down dejectedly and said, "Wipe your own *T. I'll deal with the mainland. The other party has already sent word through a middleman." Jiang Qinghua didn't even wipe the blood on his face. He asked, "What did they say?" Jiang Tai said lightly, "This is just a warning. If something like this happens again, the Jiang family should never come to the mainland again. Jiang Qinghua nodded silently. The blood flowed to his lips. It was salty and exceptionally bitter. He opened his mouth with difficulty and said, "I know what to do." Nowadays, Xiangjiang was already inseparable from the mainland. If the families in Xiangjiang only did business in Hong Kong, then they would never be able to become big. The Jiang's group had placed a heavy bet on the mainland. Once they were obstructed by the higher-ups, then the loss would be immeasurable. Once the news of the two factories being investigated got out, the stock price of the Jiang's group would definitely plummet. It's never too late to mend the pen after the sheep are lost. Jiang Tai waved his hand, indicating that he could leave. With heavy footsteps, Jiang Qinghua left the Jiang family mansion. At this moment, he hated the fellow who had instigated him to the bone. Of course, the most important thing for him right now was to calm down this storm and obtain forgiveness from Lu Chen's side. As for how to do it, Jiang Qinghua thought about it. Killing someone was just a matter of nodding his head. At most, he would just kneel down. While Jiang Qinghua was struggling to think of a solution, as the other party to the incident, Lu Chen was dealing with the backlog of documents in the office of his own studio. Because the dog abuse incident was too big, coupled with the previous incident, the morale of the crew had collapsed and many people had left. So Lu Chen simply stopped filming and let Chen Wenxiang and Wan Xiaoquan be responsible for reorganizing and recruiting new staff. He himself returned to the studio, ready to restart filming in a few days when the situation was clear. In addition, Lu Chen was also waiting for the reaction of Honghua or the Jiang family. In this invisible war, he now had the upper hand, so naturally there was no need to be anxious. The anxious one should be Jiang Qinghua and his father. Ring ring ring. As soon as Lu Chen finished signing a document, the mobile phone beside the computer rang. After he came to Xiangjiang, he bought a new mobile phone and number locally for daily use. Usually when Chen Wenxiang, Wan Xiaoquan or Li Zhen wanted to find him, they would call this work phone. In recent days this work phone had been ringing non-stop, most of which were media interviews. Lu Chen simply left it to his assistant. Out of sight, out of mind, so as not to disturb his work. But now it was his private phone that was ringing, and it was either a family member or a friend. The name displayed on the phone made Lu Chen laugh. He immediately picked it up and asked with a smile, "Child Bai, why do you call me?" The Child Bai, in Lu Chen's mouth, referred to Li Mu Bai, which was a teasing nickname for friends, different from that of others. Since coming to Xiangjiang, Lu Chen and Li Mu Bai had basically not contacted each other. When he returned to the capital, he heard from Pastor Li that this guy had taken his girlfriend to Hawaii to play and would not come back until he was tanned. "Brother Chen?" Li Mu Bai's familiar voice came from the phone, but the content was very scary. "I'm downstairs in your studio." Lu Chen was suddenly stunned. "I'm in Xiangjiang, not in the capital." "Aren't you in Hawaii?" "I just came back the day before yesterday," Li Mu Bai said with a smile. "I know you are in Xiangjiang. I am in Xiangjiang now, in the Rongjin building. The guards here don't let me in without an appointment, otherwise I will come directly to your studio." Li Mu Bai actually came here. Lu Chen was a little dizzy and said quickly, "Okay, wait a minute, I'll come down right away." If it were other uninvited guests, he would let Li Zhen receive them, but Li Mu Bai was different. The two were real friends. Li Mu Bai came back from Hawaii and came to Xiangjiang to find him. How could he sit still in the office? He must go down to meet him in person. After ending the call, Lu Chen immediately left the studio and took the elevator down to the hall on the first floor of the building. The management of the Rongjin building was very strict. Visitors without an appointment must contact the tenants at the entrance of the hall and get permission to go up. This put an end to the disturbance of idle people. When the elevator door opened, Lu Chen saw Li Mu Bai standing at the entrance. This guy with a coquettish temperament was like a firefly in the dark. It was easy to distinguish him in the crowd. However, Lu Chen's attention did not stay on Li Mu Bai for a long time. He was soon attracted by the woman wearing sunglasses and a long skirt standing next to Li Mu Bai. The other party was so familiar. Even if the huge sunglasses covered her real face, Lu Chen could still recognize her identity in an instant. The huge and unexpected surprise made him feel like he was about to fly. Chapter 499. Seeing Lu Chen, the woman in the long dress reached out and took off her sunglasses, showing a sweet smile. Her smile was nothing more than this. There was no one else in Lu Chen's eyes. He couldn't help but speed up to her. He resisted the urge to hold her in his arms, held her hand and said, "Why are you here?" The beautiful woman in the white dress was Chen Fei. Filming on the Mongolian prairie, her skin was a little tanned, but this did not damage her charm at all. Instead, it showed her healthy beauty and vitality. Every frown and every smile was still so moving. Lu Chen didn't expect that Qin Fei would come to Hong Kong with Li Mubai. Qin Fei let Lu Chen hold her hands, stared at him affectionately and said with a chuckle, "I finished my scenes on the prairie, and the director gave me half a month's vacation, so I came here. You didn't tell me about such a big thing. It was Sister Mushy who told me." When she said the last sentence, she rolled her eyes at Lu Chen angrily. Lu Chen smiled bitterly and said nothing. He didn't tell Qin Fei, of course, because he was afraid that she would worry and affect the shooting of the TV series. He just didn't expect that it was Li Mushy who told her. Hey. Li Mubai, who was ignored, was dissatisfied. "Please don't show off your love here." Lu Chen laughed, turned around and gave him a big hug. "Welcome to Hong Kong." Li Mubai also rolled his eyes. "I'm more familiar with Hong Kong than you are, okay? I have a lot of friends here." Lu Chen admitted defeat. "Let's go up and talk." Of course, Li Mubai and Qin Fei were not alone. They each brought their assistants. Qin Fei was accompanied by 2 female bodyguards. There were 6 or 7 people in total. In the elevator, Lu Chen asked Li Mubai, "I heard from your sister that you went to Hawaii for your honeymoon?" "What honeymoon? Nonsense." Li Mubai grinned. "I'm just accompanying my friend to have some fun and relax." Although he said they were friends, he couldn't hide the proud expression on his face. It was probably because he was in love. Lu Chen asked, "Why don't you bring her to Xiangjiang?" Li Mubai said helplessly, "She has something to do at home. Qin Qian wants to come, but she knows that your girlfriend." Ahem. He coughed twice and secretly glanced at Qin Fei next to him. Lu Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It made it seem as if he and Qin Qian had an unusual relationship. She was afraid of Qin Fei, his real girlfriend, so she didn't dare to follow him. It was simply a deliberate attempt to defame him. To be honest, his impression of that rebellious girl was a little blurry. Qin Fei's eyes twinkled, and there was a faint smile on his face. Fortunately, they arrived at the floor where the studio was located. The elevator door opened and everyone filed out. "You've done a good job here." Under the guidance of Lu Chen, the group of people first visited Lu Chen's studio. When the employees knew that Lu Chen's girlfriend, the future proprietress, had come in person, they all greeted her respectfully and warmly. Qin Fei responded gracefully, which made the atmosphere in the studio particularly harmonious. After the visit, the 3 of them sat down in Lu Chen's office. Li Mubai unceremoniously occupied Lu Chen's seat, and drove him and Qin Fei to the sofa. Then he patted the table and said, "I'm going to open an office in Xiangjiang, hire 17 or 18 employees, and let them call me boss every day, ha ha." Lu Chen was speechless. "Have you been too free recently?" If possible, he wanted to drive this extra-large third wheel out now, so as not to affect the joy and sweetness of his reunion with Qin Fei after a long time. Li Mubai said with a smile, "Do you think I'm joking? I'm serious. I'm not here for fun this time. First of all, I'm going to set up Mukin Crowdfunding's Xiangjiang branch, and then operate Mukin Crowdfunding to be listed on the Hong Kong stock market." Listed on the Hong Kong stock market? Lu Chen was really surprised. It should be known that Mukin Crowdfunding has only been established for more than a year. Li Mushy actually started to operate the Hong Kong stock market. Xiangjiang's stock market has a long history and strong international connection. Compared with the domestic stock market, it is more mature and rational. Therefore, many domestic powerful enterprises have been listed on the Hong Kong stock market. Originally, Li Mushy told Lu Chen that she intended to be listed on the domestic growth enterprise market. As a result, she suddenly jumped to Xiangjiang. The starting point was undoubtedly higher. Once the listing was successful, then Mukin Crowdfunding, which had obtained a lot of funds, would surely soar. "This matter is very complicated. We'll talk about it later." Li Mubai waved his hand and said to Lu Chen in a very dissatisfied tone, "You're shooting a movie in Xiangjiang and someone is looking for trouble. I can understand why you didn't tell Sister Fei, but why didn't you call your brother?" In the end, he was filled with righteous indignation. He almost pointed at Lu Chen's nose and said that he had no brothers in his eyes. "Not loyal." Lu Chen said with a wry smile, "In fact, it's not a big deal. I want to solve it by myself first. If it doesn't work, I will definitely ask you for help." When he was maliciously provoked by Honghua, Lu Chen also had the idea of asking the Li family for help. But as the saying goes, it's better to ask for help than to ask for help. He couldn't ask for help from others when he encountered a little difficulty, so this idea only flashed in his mind for a moment. In the end, he relied on his own strength to complete a beautiful counterattack against Honghua. Now Honghua was like a drowning dog. He had become the target of everyone in Xiangjiang. Even Zhou Yi admired his means, which proved that as long as the method was used correctly, any problem was not difficult to solve. The Jiang family still has some power in Xiangjiang. Li Mubai obviously already knew the background of Honghua. He said seriously, which was rare for him, "But you don't have to worry. They should take the initiative to come to apologize to you soon." Lu Chen's heart skipped a beat. He asked, "What did you do?" If Li Mubai said so, it must have nothing to do with the matter of him using the little pet to deal with Honghua. Li Mubai said with a smile, "Nothing much. I just asked someone to help me check the 2 big factories that the Zhang's group invested in the mainland." Lu Chen was really shocked. Isn't this too much? It was originally a small matter of collecting protection fees, but now it turned into the Li family dealing with the Jiang family. The matter was completely out of Lu Chen's control. Li Mubai said proudly, "Bullying you is bullying me. Bullying me is bullying our Li family. I can't say that I can deal with the Jiang family in Xiangjiang, but in the mainland, hee. Lu Chen was speechless, but he was grateful. At this time the phone on the desk rang, and the indicator light showed that it was from the internal line. Lu Chen motioned to Li Mubai to help connect it. The phone was from the receptionist. "Young Master Lu, a Mr. Jiang of the Jiang family wants to see you." Before Lu Chen could answer, Li Mubai said first, "Tell him to get out." Chapter 500. Coincidentally, when Lu Chen was talking to Li Mubai about the Jiang's group, the Jiangs sent someone to the door. Li Mubai directly made the decision for Lu Chen and asked the other party to leave. The receptionist didn't know Li Mubai's background. She could tell that it wasn't Lu Chen's voice, so she didn't dare to agree. Lu Chen had to say, "Since there's no appointment, ask him to go back first. Just say that I'm not here." This time the receptionist got the order. Li Mubai said disdainfully, "What kind of person dares to talk to me face to face? Since you want to settle the trouble, then do it according to the rules of the underworld." It was the tone of a gangster boss. Lu Chen asked with a smile, "What kind of gangster rule is that?" "Serve wine and tea as an apology." Li Mubai said matter-of-factly, "At least let the Zhang's family invite a respected senior to come out and talk to us. Otherwise, how can they get through this easily?" Lu Chen admired the gangster style of the 3rd young master of the Li family and gave him a thumbs up. Li Mubai was finally a little embarrassed and said with a smile, "I also heard it from my friends in Xiangjiang before. I haven't seen it myself, but it can't be wrong. Anyway, the other party must give enough face. Now it depends on whether the other party is sincere or not." Qin Fei asked curiously, "Do you have a lot of friends in the underworld in Xiangjiang?" Li Mubai scratched his head and said, "Not many, just some fair-weather friends." He jumped up from Lu Chen's seat and said, "Brother Qin, Sister Fei, I won't disturb you too lovey-dovey. I'm going to play with my friends." Lu Chen was surprised. "Don't be in such a hurry. Let's have dinner together. By the way, where will you stay tonight?" Although Li Mubai was a bit of an eyesore now, he helped Lu Chen find trouble with the Zhang's family in the mainland, which was undoubtedly a real friendship. How could Lu Chen let him run away like this? That would be too much. Li Mubai smiled and said, "Brother Qin, I'm more familiar with Xiangjiang than you are. My brother has a big house here. Let's change the dinner to tomorrow. I've already made an appointment with my friends in Xiangjiang before I came. They've prepared a lot of programs." He glanced at Qin Fei maliciously and said, "If Sister Fei didn't come, I would definitely take you to play with me, so let's save it for today." Lu Chen was really impressed by him. "Well then, you can't stand me up again tomorrow night." Li Mubai made an okay gesture to him and then left the studio with his assistant. The relationship between Lu Chen and Li Mubai didn't need too much courtesy, so Lu Chen walked him to the door and came back. After closing the door, he impatiently pulled Qin Fei into his arms and kissed her on the lips. Qin Fei giggled and catered to him coquettishly and softly, letting Lu Chen have enough of her gentle and sweet taste. It was a pity that this was the office and they couldn't go too far. After a few minutes of tenderness and intimacy, Lu Chen reluctantly let go of the beauty in his arms. If they continued, he really couldn't control himself. "Let's go." He took Qin Fei's hand and said, "Let's go home." Lu Chen asked Li Zhen to settle down Qin Fei's 2 bodyguards and assistants. He drove back to his home in Repulse Bay with his girlfriend and enjoyed the wonderful time alone as he wished. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. When the two ended their passionate entanglement, it was already dark. On the soft and comfortable big bed, Qin Fei leaned in Lu Chen's arms, naughtily drawing circles on his strong chest with her fingers, while telling Lu Chen about what happened after Lu Chen's visit last time. Filming on location was very hard work. The role that Qin Fei played was very important, and the director's requirements were very high. She gritted her teeth and persevered. Finally, she successfully finished her scenes and got half a month's vacation. The shooting cycle of a big drama like Golden Long Songs was calculated in years. There were many characters involved, the plot was complicated, and the details were exquisite. Naturally, the requirements for the actors were very high. So although she suffered a lot through this sharpening, Qin Fei's acting skills had greatly improved, and she was recognized by the director and her colleagues. She was still very proud of this. After listening to Qin Fei's story, Lu Chen kissed her on the face and said, "It's worth praising. Then I'll take you to a big meal to reward you." Qin Fei coquettishly rolled her eyes at him and said, "Do you think I'm a little girl?" Although she said so, she still got up and dressed happily. She dressed up again and went out with Lu Chen. Both of them were well-known stars in the mainland. In Xiangjiang they were not as famous as the big stars in Hong Kong, so they didn't have to worry about running into crazy fans on the road. In addition, it was night, so they didn't wear sunglasses and masks. In fact, Qin Fei came to Xiangjiang far more often than Lu Chen, and she also bought a house in Xiangjiang, so she was more familiar with Xiangjiang than Lu Chen. As a result, she even found the place to eat. The two had a warm and sweet seafood dinner together, and then walked around Central while holding hands. In the luxury store at the Landmark Square, Lu Chen also bought her the latest bag. It was already late at night when they returned home. After washing up, they went to bed. When he woke up the next morning, Lu Chen reached out and touched his girlfriend who was sleeping beside him. He felt like he was dreaming. As he touched the fire and woke Qin Fei up. Then, in her coquettish voice, the passionate scene played again. The two were like all young couples in love, never tired of loving each other. It was not until 9 o'clock in the morning that Lu Chen turned on his two mobile phones. As a result, his work mobile phone had just been turned on, and only a few seconds later, a call came in. The call was from Chen Wenxiang, who called Lu Chen. The director of the studio couldn't contain his excitement and said, "Young Master Lu Honghua has admitted defeat. Jiang Qinghua sent a message through a middleman. They are willing to hold a feast to apologize to you." Chen Wenxiang had been under a lot of pressure some time ago. He was the last person he wanted to see Lu Chen's movie go wrong, because it was not only related to his job, but also affected his beloved daughter's future in the film and television industry. Although Lu Chen had completed a beautiful counterattack, Chen Wenxiang was secretly worried that it would completely anger the Jiang family and bring more trouble to the crew. So when he received the news this morning, he couldn't believe his ears. Jiang Qinghua admitted defeat just like that. Chen Wenxiang, who didn't know the deeper inside story, was extremely happy. He called Lu Chen again and again to tell him the good news. Until now the call went through. Li Mubai was right. Lu Chen wasn't surprised. He gave Chen Wenxiang a few instructions and hung up. However, just as he put down his mobile phone, it rang again. This time it was Zhou Yi. Chapter 501. Zhou Yi told Lu Chen over the phone that Jiang Qinghua from Honghua had invited an old senior to apologize to Lu Chen through him and arrange a banquet at the Hentang Hotel tomorrow night to apologize to Lu Chen in person. This senior was highly respected in the circle and was very famous. Zhou Yi could be considered as his junior. Jiang Qinghua had probably paid a very high price to bring out this god, and it also proved his sincerity. Lu Chen thought for a while and said, "All right then, I'll also give face to the senior and come on time tomorrow night." "That's really great," Zhou Yi said with a smile. Jiang Qinghua almost kowtowed to the ground. "It's not good for us to be ruthless. Harmony breeds wealth. By the way, when will we start filming again?" Zhou Yi was actually a proud person, but his pride had always been hidden in his bones and he would not easily show it. There were really not many people in the Xiangjiang industry who could catch his eye. But for Lu Chen, a young man who was more than 10 years younger than him, he was now really convinced. His original thoughts had long disappeared and he sincerely wanted to continue this cooperation. Lu Chen replied, "We'll resume filming today." Time was precious and could not afford to waste any time. Being delayed by Honghua for a week, the loss of money was secondary. The key was that the filming plan was disrupted, which made Lu Chen quite angry. Now that Jiang Qinghua had admitted defeat, it was reasonable for the crew to resume filming today. Zhou Yi asked with concern, "Have you found the actress who will play the role of Grandma Tree Fairy?" Lu Chen could not help but feel a little strange. Although Zhou Yi had acquired Jiang Pictures and became the boss of this old film company, he actually did not know much about movies. The specific matters were naturally done by his subordinates and he never asked about the details. Lu Chen had dealt with him a few times and had a certain understanding of him, so he was very puzzled. Not yet, but it won't affect the resumption of filming today. Is there a problem? Zhou Yi said a little helplessly, it's nothing much. Lu Jiahui looked for me and said that he wanted to return to the crew. He even said that he wanted to serve tea to you as an apology. He's an old friend of mine and begged me with tears and snot. Lu Jiahui was the actor recommended by Jiang Pictures to play the role of Granny Treant. Like Ma Rongjin, he was an experienced actor. However, an experienced actor might not have the strength of character. Under the threat of Hong Hua and the Jiang family, he was the first to retreat. Now that he had changed his mind and wanted to return to the cast, he must have heard the news. Lu Chen replied without hesitation, I can't afford to invite this person. You can reply for me. What kind of joke was this? If such a person was allowed to return, what would the people in the crew think? Lu Chen was not a good guy without principles. Zhou Yi was not surprised by Lu Chen's rejection. He smiled and said, all right, I'll reject him. Actually, it's not like he has to come back. He's just a little scared. Lu Chen thought for a while and immediately understood what Zhou Yi meant. Lu Jiahui had taken the initiative to withdraw from the cast because he was afraid of Hong Hua and the Jiang family. Now that Lu Chen's side had obviously won, he was afraid that Lu Chen would settle the score after the fall, so he put down his pride and begged Zhou Yi. Returning to the cast was not his goal. His real goal was to beg for mercy. Understanding the key point, Lu Chen was really disgusted with Lu Jiahui. Let's not talk about this person anymore. It's boring. Zhou Yi understood. All right, let's meet at the Hentang Hotel tomorrow night. After hanging up, Lu Chen said to Qin Fei who had finished dressing up, let's go. Qin Fei was sitting in front of the dressing table. She tilted her head and was putting on the last earring. She asked curiously, your crew is still short of actors? Lu Chen nodded and said, someone was originally chosen for Granny Treant, but they withdrew later. Lu Chen did not say much about the specifics. Anyway, Lu Jiahui had already been included in his list of people he would never work with. Granny Treant? Qin Fei had read the script of a Chinese ghost story, so she quickly remembered. The villain boss. Lu Chen smiled and said, yes, there are more scenes, so we have to choose a more reliable one. He had already asked Chen Wenxiang to handle the matter of the new casting. He believed that there would be some progress soon. Qin Fei blinked and suddenly said, I'll play Granny Treant, what do you think? Lu Chen was caught off guard by her sudden idea. What did you say? Qin Fei smiled and said, I said I'll play Granny Treant. I have half a month's vacation. If I hurry up, it shouldn't be a problem to finish my scenes during this period, right? Of course, time was not a problem. The story of a Chinese ghost story was very strong, but the background of the story was fictitious. There were very few scenes involved, so it was not complicated to shoot. Everything could be settled in Lion Rock film and television. It was just that the post-production special effects would be a little troublesome. Half a month's time would be enough if it was all used on Qin Fei. However, Lu Chen did not even think about it. How can that do? Isn't that making you destroy your own image? No. It should be known that he originally thought of letting Qin Fei play the role of Nie Xiaoqin, but due to the scheduling inconsistency and the audience's aesthetic fatigue, Qin Fei did not follow him to Hong Kong. Now that he had asked her to play Granny Treant, the change in style was too drastic. Lu Chen was worried that it would have a negative impact on Qin Fei's image. However, Qin Fei was very serious. I think there's no problem. A real actor can't be fixed in the same role forever. You can play the positive character, but you can also play the negative character vividly. I'm very willing to accept such a challenge. As she said that, she got up and leaned into Lu Chen's arms. She said softly, you've done so much for this movie. I hope I can help you. In order to shoot this, a Chinese ghost story, Lu Chen had started to lose weight more than a month ago. He had lost more than 10 pounds by now. He was not that kind of strong body, so now he looked a little more gentle and weak, which was in line with the needs of the characters in the movie. He came to Hong Kong alone to work hard and tried to integrate into the circle of Hong Kong. He established Lu Chen Film Studio from scratch and looked for people to cooperate with to film a movie. He also encountered the provocation of gangs and clubs. This road was not smooth. As a friend of Lu Chen, Li Mubai had made a big move to deal with the Jiang family in the mainland and helped Lu Chen deal with his opponents. As Lu Chen's closest lover, how could she stand by and watch? Destroy his own image? That was not necessarily the case. If the villain was played well, it could also improve his image. Needless to say, Lu Chen understood Chen Fei-er's intentions. He hugged the beautiful woman in his arms and felt happy in his heart. He hoped that time would stop at this moment forever. Chapter 502. Lion Rock Film and Television Base, the former site of Fane Temple. The set, which had been quiet for a few days, became lively again. The tarpaulin covering the props was pulled away, and expensive high-definition digital cameras were set up again. Sound recording, lighting, art, makeup. The crew members all seemed to have been injected with chicken blood, and they were all busy in high spirits. A Chinese ghost story was being res-hot. Ever since the opening ceremony of this movie, the mood of the crew members had been on a roller coaster. At one time, everyone was in a panic and thought that they were going to be dismissed. Now that the clouds had cleared, everyone was naturally happy. Nowadays, the competition in Xiangjiang's film and television industry was extremely fierce, but the market share did not increase. Many people in the industry could not find suitable jobs, so they had no choice but to change careers, or go to the mainland, Taiwan, Japan, and Korea to find opportunities. It was undoubtedly very difficult to change careers after being used to a familiar job, and the road outside was even more difficult when people were away from home. Therefore, everyone cherished their current job opportunities. Most importantly, as the main investor of the film, Lu Chen, was kind and generous, so they would not suffer losses working with him. Therefore, when faced with the pressure from Honghua, they all persisted and did not choose to quit. Their choice was undoubtedly correct. When they received the notice of the reshoot in the morning, everyone rushed to the set as soon as possible. Without Chen Wenxiang's command, they took the initiative to complete the work before the reshoot. When Lu Chen arrived at the Fane Temple set with Chen Fei-er, it was already a boiling cauldron of voices. The atmosphere was excellent. "This is my girlfriend." Lu Chen first introduced Chen Fei-er to Chen Wenxiang. "This is Mr. Chen Wenxiang, the director of the studio." "Hello, Uncle Chang." Chen Fei-er generously extended her hand to Chen Wenxiang. "Lu Chen told me about you several times. Thanks to your help, he can stand firm in Xiangjiang." Chen Wenxiang was flattered. He quickly shook hands with Chen Fei-er and said, "You flatter me." "Hello, Miss Chen Fei-er. I've heard a lot about you. Young Master Lu is really lucky." Of course, he knew that Lu Chen's girlfriend was the famous heavenly queen, Chen Fei-er. As one of the few mainland stars who were popular in Xiangjiang, Chen Fei-er's news could occasionally be seen in Xiangjiang's newspapers and magazines. However, the photos in the newspapers and magazines didn't capture Chen Fei-er's true charm at all. She didn't wear any makeup and her beauty was natural. Every frown and smile of hers had a peerless beauty that could topple cities. She was truly dazzling. Xiangjiang was a place that produced beauties. Every year, there would be many outstanding beauties in the Miss Hong Kong and Miss Asia selection. However, Chen Wenxiang felt that those Hong Kong sisters and Asian sisters that he had seen before were lacking in something compared to Chen Fei-er. Wan Xiaoquan and Chen Fei-er knew each other, so they exchanged pleasantries when they met. Wan Xiaoquan said jokingly, "Since you're already here, why don't you make a cameo in the movie?" Chen Fei-er and Lu Chen looked at each other. The latter smiled and said, "Director Wan, I'm going to let Fei-er play the role of Granny Dryad." "What?" Wan Xiaoquan and Chen Wenxiang asked in unison. "Play the role of Granny Dryad." The role of Granny Dryad in a Chinese ghost story was a big villain. Her image was set to be cruel and vicious, and she was full of demonic aura. That was why Lu Jiaowei had been asked to disguise himself as a woman to play this role. Lu Jiaowei had quit the cast, and Chen Wenxiang was still having a headache over the replacement. This was because this role had very high requirements for the actor's temperament and acting skills. Otherwise, it would be easy for the actor to act out of place. Now that Chen Fei-er was actually going to play the role of Granny Dryad, how could the two of them not be surprised? Chen Fei-er pursed her lips and smiled. "I want to challenge myself." This was undoubtedly a very strong reason. Lu Chen had seriously thought about it on the way here. "This is what Fei-er requested. I think it's fine. The main thing is to modify the settings and put more effort into the special effects makeup. The effect will definitely not be bad." His original setting for Granny Dryad was based on the original version in the dream world. Now that Chen Fei-er was going to play the role, he definitely could not follow the original version. He had to make targeted changes. Wan Xiaoquan thought about it and said decisively, "Let's give it a try then." He had thought it through very clearly. First of all, Lu Chen's request could not be rejected. Secondly, Qin Fei joining a Chinese ghost story to play the villain, the big boss. That was undoubtedly an excellent publicity stunt and would be very helpful in increasing the domestic box office. Finally, Qin Fei playing the role of Granny Dryad could make the style of the movie more diverse. Since Lu Qin and Wan Xiaoquan had no objections, Chen Wenxiang naturally did not have any objections. As they were talking, another group of people entered the set. The person walking at the front was Nie Mingzhu. When she saw Qin Fei standing beside Lu Qin, a look of surprise flashed in her eyes. Then she quickly walked over. Young Master Lu, Director Wan, Uncle Chang. Nie Mingzhu greeted Lu Qin and the others one by one. Finally, her gaze landed on Qin Fei. This must be Sister Qin Fei, right? Lu Qin quickly introduced, this is Miss Nie Mingzhu. She will play Nie Xiaoqian. Qin Fei suddenly understood. She smiled and extended her hand to her. Miss Nie, nice to meet you. It's my honor. Nie Mingzhu said with a smile, you can just call me Mingzhu. I'm a fan of yours. I asked a friend in the mainland to buy 10 sets of your Woman Flower album for my collection. These songs are really nice. Her cheerful appearance was completely devoid of her usual cold and reserved demeanor. She was no different from an ordinary female fan who had met her idol. Her joy came from the bottom of her heart. To be honest, it was impossible for Qin Fei not to feel the slightest bit jealous when she saw that Lu Qin had found such a beautiful female lead. However, when she saw that the other party was not shrewd at all, she felt relieved. Thank you, Sister Mingzhu. As soon as they met, the two of them became familiar with each other and talked intimately. Their topic quickly changed from the role of the actors in the crew to the maintenance of makeup, bags and other aspects. There was really a lot to talk about. Lu Qin was happy with this. He asked Chen Wenxiang to gather all the staff members of the crew together. After everyone was present, Lu Qin announced 3 things. First of all, the official filming of a Chinese ghost story had been resumed. All the problems that had occurred before had been resolved. Second, the mainland's heavenly queen, Miss Qin Fei, had joined the cast to play the role of Granny Tree Spirit. Finally, after a Chinese ghost story was released, Lu Qin Studio would take out 10% of the box office profits as a bonus and reward it to all the members of the crew according to their contribution. When Lu Qin announced something, the crew members responded with warm applause and cheers. In the end, the applause and cheers almost blew the roof off. With such an atmosphere and momentum, if they still could not film a Chinese ghost story, well, it would really be a sin. Chapter 503. Qin Fei joining a Chinese ghost story was undoubtedly good news for the crew. By now, even the handymen and logistics workers in the crew knew the background of Lu Qin, the film's investor and male lead. They also knew how popular he was in the mainland. For a movie, the popularity of the lead was undoubtedly a guarantee of the box office. Take Hong Kong's movies for example. Lu Gangxing had made several bad movies, but these bad movies still sold well because fans were willing to support them. Now that another heavenly queen-level female star has joined the cast, the local box office of Hong Kong is unpredictable, but it is estimated that the big market in the mainland will not be bad. It should be known that Lu Qin and Qin Fei are the famous golden couple partner in the mainland entertainment industry. For these crew members, being able to participate in the production of a popular movie, regardless of the specific remuneration, the qualifications alone were very precious, and their voices in the circle would be much louder. What's more, Lu Qin had generously taken out 10% of the box office profits as a bonus. The morale of the crew instantly reached the maximum. A new shooting plan was quickly brought out. The stylists and makeup artists of Jaeyoung Pictures worked overnight to redesign the image of Grandma Tree and create it perfectly on Qin Fei. The new boss combined Qin Fei's own characteristics. She was beautiful and enchanting with a hint of ruthlessness. Her heavy gold makeup and gorgeous clothes formed a sharp contrast with Nie Xiaoqian, who was as pure as water in a white dress. In Lu Chen's opinion, Qin Fei's role as Grandma Tree was undoubtedly more attractive than the classic character in the original version in his memory, whether it was in terms of image or temperament. Could be said that it was full of highlights. Qin Fei also felt good. After finishing the makeup, he specially asked his assistant to take a photo of himself and asked the crew's art designers to slightly retouch it before posting it on his blog. The content of the blog post was very simple. What do you think of my character in a Chinese ghost story? This informal makeup photo appeared on Qin Fei's blog and immediately attracted the attention of countless fans. Some were surprised, screaming, complaining, asking. The number of clicks and comments flooded the page. What am I doing? A Chinese ghost story? Isn't it the movie I shot in Xiangjiang this morning? I Fei am going to be a guest star too? This is too demonic. I can't believe this is my Fei. This can't be the female lead, right? I've read strange stories from a Chinese studio, and Ye Xiaoqian wouldn't look like this. It's time to guess the riddle. May I know who Fei is playing? Someone guessed correctly. Could it be the antagonist Tree Demon? No way. Qin Feier posted a photo of himself without giving any explanation. He left the fans with countless puzzles. Actually, this was a very clever marketing method. It deliberately left everyone in suspense and let the fans discuss it. Invisibly, it would promote the movie, A Chinese Ghost Story. Of course, only a big shot like her, who had tens of millions of fans on her blog, could play this game well. Otherwise, if she was not popular and only had zombie fans, the number of comments would be very few. She would only be asking to be humiliated. As Qin Feier's vacation time was limited, in the following days, the entire crew would film around her and finish all the scenes involving her first. At this time, it showed the maturity and strength of the Xiangjiang film industry. Probably in order to make up for their previous mistakes, Jiayang Pictures had sent all their elites over, increasing the number of people in the crew to more than 150. In several important parts, they had also hired professional experts in the industry. They were nervous but orderly, busy but not chaotic. With the cooperation of Chen Wenxiang and the director of Jiayang Pictures, the entire crew was like a tightly wound machine, working against time. During the most prosperous period of the Xiangjiang film industry, many film companies shot low-budget movies. They could produce a new film in a few weeks. Although there were many shoddy productions, the efficiency was undoubtedly very high. Although the current Xiangjiang movies were already declining, this kind of efficiency had been continued. Except for a few directors who were very individualistic, most of the Xiangjiang directors were experts in making movies with high efficiency. The characteristics of the directors affected the crew, and even the professionals in the Xiangjiang industry were used to working overtime. Everyone worked together to make up for the lost time. Lu Chen was also very busy. Not only did he have to work on the crew, but he also had a lot of things to do outside the crew. For example, attending Jiang Qinghua's apology banquet. The third young master of the Jiang family and the boss of Honghua held a banquet at the famous Hentang Hotel in Xiangjiang. He invited Lu Zhenghao, a senior in the circle, to act as a mediator and Zhou Yi as a witness. It could be said that he had given enough face. According to the words of the circle, Jiang Qinghua almost kowtowed to the ground. Therefore Lu Chen must attend in person. Otherwise, it would mean that he would fight to the death with the other party, which was more ruthless than slapping his face. Of course he would not attend the banquet alone. Li Mubai, his assistant Zhang Xiaofeng and Wan Yong would go with him. The four of them were neither too many nor too few. If there were too few they would appear weak. If there were too many they would appear to lack confidence. Although the apology banquet was not a Hongmen banquet, there were also many rules. As for Qin Feier, she was not suitable to attend such a banquet, so Lu Chen did not bring her. The Hentang Hotel was located in the prime area of the Mid-Mountain area, adjacent to the central business district. This five-star hotel built in the 1990s used to be one of the tallest buildings in Xiangjiang. The investor invited a famous German designer to design it. Now, it was not inferior to the surrounding high-rise buildings. When the car arrived at the hotel, Lu Chen got out of the car and entered the lobby. He saw Zhou Yi waiting in the lobby. He was very surprised. "Boss Zhou, why are you here?" Zhou Yi said seriously, "I'm waiting for you. We're together. Of course we have to go up together." Lu Chen was speechless. "Boss Zhou, you're making me so embarrassed." He knew that this was Zhou Yi's determination to stand with him. Lu Chen really admired this Xiangjiang businessman. He could take it easy and let it go. In the face of benefits he did not care about his face. He was really smooth and slick. No wonder he could build such a big family business from scratch. Zhou Yi said with a smile, "Actually, I've just arrived and I'm not familiar with Jiang Qinghua. It's more appropriate for me to wait for you to come." He keenly noticed Li Mubai standing beside Lu Chen. He asked curiously, "This is?" Lu Chen briefly introduced him. "This is my friend Li Mubai. He just came from the mainland." Zhou Yi's eyes suddenly lit up. He took half a step forward and took the initiative to extend his hand to Li Mubai. "Hello, Mr. Li." Li Mubai smiled faintly and shook hands with him. "Hello, Boss Zhou." A thoughtful look flashed in Zhou Yi's eyes. He immediately recovered his smile. "Then let's go up." They took the elevator and went straight to the floor where the banquet was booked. Chapter 504. Jiang Qinghua stood at the entrance of the banquet hall, waiting for Lu Chen. The banquet hall he booked at the Hentang Hotel was called the Crane Hall. This hall with an area of more than 100 square meters was very famous in the circle. The name Crane Hall was taken from the poem, "Thousands of years old cranes still have regrets, how can a year of people be heartless?" But later it was homophoned as "Harmony is precious. Harmony is precious." Therefore, the Crane Hall became the place of choice for many high-level people in the circle to negotiate, and the circle here referred to the circle of Jianghu in Hong Kong. Jiang Qinghua was a person of status. Even if he apologized, he would not humbly wait at the entrance of the hotel. But after hearing the news of Lu Chen's arrival, he still sat at the table, which was not sincere. And beside him, there was a white-haired old man with a ruddy face. When Lu Chen and the others came to the door of the Crane Hall under the guidance of the waiter, the two immediately looked at each other. This was the first time Lu Chen saw Jiang Qinghua. Jiang Qinghua looked about 30 years old, with regular facial features and quite manly, but his thick black eyebrows made him look slightly fierce, and his bright eyes left a deep impression. He took the initiative to greet Lu Chen, and with a smile on his face, he stretched out his hand and said, "This must be young Master Lu? I'm Jiang Qinghua. I've heard a lot about young Master Lu. It's my honor to take the time to come." If others didn't know, they would think that Jiang Qinghua was an admirer of Lu Chen. Lu Chen shook hands with him calmly and said, "Mr. Jiang, you're too polite." This was how social occasions were. Even if both sides wanted to pull out a knife to kill each other, they would still be polite on the surface as if they were very harmonious. If you didn't learn this, you wouldn't be able to survive in this circle. The current Jianghu was not the Jianghu of the past. Jiang Qinghua had a very special feeling. Jiang Qinghua had seen Lu Chen's information, but the photos were completely different from the real person. Lu Chen was young beyond imagination. He was tall and handsome and had the temperament of a star idol, but his speech and behavior were steady like a veteran. He was neither humble nor arrogant, nor impatient, as if everything was under his control, and his whole body was full of maturity and confidence. Jiang Qinghua had never seen such a young man before. He wondered if he had known Lu Chen long ago, would he have listened to others' instigation to deal with Lu Chen? After all, Jiang Qinghua was not an ordinary person. He quickly came back to his senses. He introduced the white-haired elder to Lu Chen. "This is Lu Zhenghao, my senior." Lu Chen hastily cupped his hands in greeting. Junior Lu Chen greets Fifth Lord. He had heard from Zhou Yi that Fifth Lord Lu was a legendary figure in the circle. He was one of the leaders of the Hong sect and had many disciples. He had a wide network of friends in Hong Kong and had friends from all walks of life. Interestingly, Lu Zhenghao chose to retire before the storm of the Hong Kong government's crackdown on the Triad organization. Coupled with the fact that he had no criminal record, he escaped unscathed. Later, Lu Zhenghao had been living in seclusion in the old house halfway up the mountain. Although he had retired from Jianghu, he still had a very high reputation and prestige in the circle. Even now, his words still carried considerable weight. However, in recent years, Lu Zhenghao was getting old and did not like to be active and meddle in other people's business. Jiang Qinghua must have paid a high price to be able to invite this master. Lu Zhenghao was wearing an ancient silk shirt and black cloth shoes. His hair and beard were all white and he looked like a sage. He cupped his hands in greeting and said, "Hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. Young Master Lu is indeed a talent. You have come to Hong Kong, and you have surpassed all the young people in Hong Kong." Everyone laughed and the atmosphere was quite harmonious. Lu Chen smiled and said, "Fifth Lord, you flatter me." Lu Zhenghao waved his hand and said, "Let's talk inside." So everyone entered the hall and sat down according to the position of host and guest. Lu Zhenghao naturally sat at the head of the table. After sitting down, Lu Zhenghao curiously looked at Lu Chen's companions and said, "Young Master Lu, these are?" Lu Chen hurriedly introduced, "This is my assistant, Zhang Xiaofeng, and this is my assistant, Wan Yong." When Lu Chen introduced Zhang Xiaofeng, Lu Zhenghao just nodded his head to show that he knew, but when he introduced Wan Yong, his eyes narrowed and his expression became serious. "So this is the Lu family's class leader who is famous in Hong Kong. He is a real man." Previously, when Hong Hua's people surrounded the set, Wan Yong led his people to guard the gate to prevent them from entering. He persisted until Lu Chen returned, and then led his people to kill Hong Hua's henchmen. He single-handedly put down 4 or 5 gangsters, and his performance was even more eye-catching than Lu Chen's. At that time, the scene was captured by the paparazzi on the scene, and the video was quickly posted on the internet. Therefore, inadvertently, the Lu family class became famous, and their identity and origin were revealed by the people in the crew. As the head of the Lu family class, Wan Yong actually had a lot of fans on the internet. His burly and strong body, superb skills, and cold and fierce appearance all became the focus of heated discussion, reminding many people of the Big Circle gang that once ran amok in Hong Kong. Although the Big Circle gang was notorious back then, there were a lot of young people in Hong Kong who worshipped and respected them. Therefore it was not surprising that Lu Jinghao knew Wan Yong. Wan Yong was not good at socializing, and for Lu Jinghao's praise, he forced a smile and said, "Thank you." Lu Jinghao did not care. He had seen similar people before, and knew that the other party just did not like to talk. Jiang Qinghua took another look at Wan Yong. He knew that Wan Yong was a retired soldier, and the whole Lu family class was. If he had known this, he would have been much more cautious. At least he would not have casually let his subordinates do things that he did not pay attention to. But now he had to hold a feast to apologize, which made him lose face. Lu Chen finally introduced Li Mubai. "This is my good friend Li Mubai." Li Mubai smiled and imitated Lu Chen's manner of cupping one hand in the other before his chest and said, "Hello, both of you." Lu Jinghao was a little unhappy, feeling that this young man was not polite, but Jiang Qinghua's face suddenly changed, looking at the other party with a very complicated expression. Li Mubai, surnamed Li. It was said that the person who caused trouble in the Jiang family's two big factories in the mainland was related to a certain surnamed Li. Even his father could not find out more inside information, only knowing that the other party was a high-level figure in the mainland. Surnamed Li and also a good friend of Lu Qin, Li Mubai's identity was obvious, and he came to this apology feast with him. Jiang Qinghua felt a dull pain in his testicles. He thought he was smart all his life, but he actually rashly picked a fight without knowing the details of his opponent. This failure was really asking for humiliation, and he had lost all his face. Since he lost, he had to admit it, but Jiang Qinghua did not intend to bear it alone. Compared to Lu Qin, he actually hated another person more. Chapter 505. After guessing Li Mubai's origin, Jiang Qinghua not only had a headache, but his head hurt even more. He has been wearing a dark gray hat. Even after Lu Qin and others came, he didn't take it off. It's not that Jiang Qinghua doesn't understand social etiquette, nor is it that he is arrogant, but the hat covers the bandage wrapped around his head. Jiang Tai's ashtray hit was very heavy. Not only did it break Jiang Qinghua's head, but it also caused a slight fracture of his skull and a concussion. If it weren't for the wine to apologize, he would probably still be in the hospital. Therefore, Jiang Qinghua understood very well how angry his father was at that time. The root cause was probably this mischievous playboy in front of him. After knowing the identity of Li Mubai, Jiang Qinghua's attitude became even more polite and cautious. He swallowed a mouthful of bitterness, stood up, picked up the teapot on the table and slowly poured a cup of hot tea. Then this arrogant child of the Jiang family brought the tea to Lu Chen with both hands and said, "Young Master Lu, I have eyes but fail to recognize Mount Tai. I hope young Master Lu can forgive me for my previous offense." This cup of tea was very particular. It represented Jiang Qinghua's most formal attitude of apology, which was equivalent to spreading his face on the ground. It depended on how Lu Chen would respond. If Lu Chen wasn't satisfied and refused this cup of tea, it would be equivalent to stepping on Jiang Qinghua's face, and the two sides would fight to the death. Of course, the premise was that Jiang Qinghua had the strength to fight to the death. Otherwise, he would certainly lose his face and would no longer be able to survive. Lu Chen pondered for a moment. Previously, Jiang Qinghua's Honghua had caused so much trouble for him, and the shooting of the crew had to be interrupted. If he simply forgave the other party, then he would undoubtedly be degrading himself. Li Mubai snorted and tapped his fingers on the table. He said in a strange tone, "Just a cup of tea and it's over? How can there be such a good thing in the world? Next time I go to Fuyuan and Pengfei factory and throw 2 dead dogs, at most I'll just pour a cup of tea." Jiang Qinghua's heart trembled. He finally confirmed Li Mubai's identity. Fuyuan and Pengfei were 2 large factories that the Jiang Group had invested in and built in the mainland. Currently, they were being investigated by the tax and environmental protection departments, causing Jiang Tai to be badly battered. Jiang Qinghua hurriedly smiled apologetically and said, "Li Xiao's words are too serious. I have also prepared a gift as an apology." He winked, and the assistant standing behind him immediately presented a thin envelope to Lu Chen. Jiang Qinghua said, "This is just a small apology. Please accept it, young Master Lu." Lu Chen looked at Li Mubai and the latter nodded slightly. He then opened the envelope on the spot. Inside the envelope was a check from a bank in China for 10 million yuan. In order to fight back against Honghua, Lu Qin had donated 5 million yuan to the Little Pet Foundation. Jiang Qinghua must have known that, so he was now taking out double the amount to apologize, which was very sincere. At this time Lu Zhenghao said, "Young Master Lu, this time it was Xiao Zhang's fault, but he was also deceived and encouraged, so let's be harmonious and make money." Lu Chen's eyes flashed. He put the check back into the envelope and gave it to Zhang Xiaofeng to put away. He smiled faintly and said, "Since Fifth Master has said so, I will definitely give him face and let this matter go." With that he took the teacup from Jiang Qinghua's hand. Lu Chen took the tea from Jiang Qinghua, and the atmosphere in the hall suddenly relaxed. Lu Jinghao, Zhou Yi and the others all had smiles on their faces. As Lu Jinghao said, being harmonious and making money was the only way to make money. It was not the 70s and 80s anymore, and the old ways of fighting and killing were no longer feasible. Lu Chen sipped the tea in his cup, put down the teacup and said, But? Jiang Qinghua's face suddenly froze. What he was most worried about was that Lu Chen would be unforgiving and ask for more. Lu Chen continued, "But I'm curious, who on earth is deceiving and encouraging Mr. Jiang?" Lu Chen stared at him with bright eyes. Jiang Qinghua, on the other hand, breathed a big sigh of relief and said with a wry smile, "This matter is also shameful, but since young Master Lu wants to know, I will naturally tell you everything I know." In fact, even if Lu Chen did not ask, he would have taken the initiative to tell him. Jiang Qinghua was born in a rich and powerful family. It could be said that he had been living in luxury since he was a child, and his life had been smooth sailing. Even after he became independent, he had never suffered any losses in the business world. This time he had suffered a particularly heavy and severe setback. Because of this, he hated the person who encouraged him to deal with Lu Chen the most. This person was not an ordinary person, but Cui Xingxin, the head of Huaguan Pictures. Huaguan Pictures was one of the top 10 film companies in China, and it was a subsidiary of Huaguan Entertainment Group. The current general manager, Cui Xingxin, was in his early 30s, and he was a young man in the mainland film and television circle. The common characteristic of young men was that they were ambitious. Cui Xingxin had always been unwilling to be lonely. This time, the Hong Kong government and the State Administration of Radio, Film and Television issued a new film support policy, and he saw an opportunity. As soon as the news came out in the industry, Huaguan Pictures took the lead in setting up a branch in Hong Kong, and Cui Xingxin was personally in charge of Hong Kong. At present, the new film was already in the process of shooting. Jiang Qinghua said, "I met Cui Xingxin at a cocktail party, and I wanted to cooperate with him. Then he proposed to deal with you and promised to participate in my film company after it was done." "Do you know why he wants to deal with us?" Lu Chen was very puzzled. He knew about Huaguan Pictures, but he didn't know Cui Xingxin at all, and there was no grievance between the two sides. Jiang Qinghua directly sold Cui Xingxin out. "First of all, the film you made is in conflict with theirs. Your film is called A Chinese Ghost Story, and his film is called The Painted Skin." The Painted Skin. Lu Chen suddenly realized that The Painted Skin was also a story in Strange Tales from a Chinese studio. In this way, the two sides had the same theme, and when they applied for the policy support quota in the future, they would inevitably face direct competition. The first batch of new film support policies in Hong Kong only had 20 places, and the competition was very fierce. If the same type of film collided, Huaguan Pictures had every reason to cause trouble for A Chinese Ghost Story. Lu Chen couldn't help sneering and said, "Huaguan Pictures really thinks highly of me." Whether in terms of strength, scale, or status in the industry, Lu Chen Studio, which had just entered the film industry, was much worse than Huaguan Pictures. Unexpectedly, Cui Xingxin made trouble for them. Lu Chen was really a little speechless. Jiang Qinghua hesitated for a moment and said, "Also, I heard that Cui Xingxin once pursued Qin Fei." Lu Chen was speechless. It turned out that this was Qin Fei's pursuer, and he probably hated him for failing. At this point, the truth was revealed. Chapter 506. Ever since he started dating Qin Fei, Lu Chen had been aware that he would be hated by others. As a popular singer in the domestic pop music industry, Qin Fei was definitely one of the top people in the circle, whether it was her talent, character, or appearance. Naturally, she had many pursuers. And those who had the confidence and ability to pursue her were definitely not ordinary people. Unlike many people in the circle who treated love as casual as eating and drinking, Qin Fei was very conservative in terms of love. Although there were several rumors, they were all proved to be fake news or deliberately hyped up. Therefore, when her relationship with Lu Chen was made public, it caused a great shock in the circle. Among those who had painstakingly pursued her but failed, there were really too few people who had no grudges or resentment in their hearts. Lu Chen just didn't expect that he would come across a former pursuer of Chen Fei in Hong Kong. Should we teach Cui Xingxian a lesson? When coming out of the Hentang Hotel, Li Mubai was eager to try. Let him know that we are not to be trifled with. Under the leadership of Lu Zhenghao, Jiang Qinghua apologized with tea and took out 10 million as compensation. The two sides shook hands and the storm came to an end. As for the trouble that Honghua was currently facing, it had nothing to do with Lu Chen. In general, such an ending was not bad. But the third young master of the Li family was eager to see the world in chaos. How dare he have ideas about Sister Fei? Let's beat him up. Lu Chen couldn't help laughing. Forget it. He already owed the Li family a lot. If he let Li Mubai deal with Cui Xingxian, it would be too immature. Even if it was to fight back against Cui Xingxian, Lu Chen had to rely on his own strength. Li Mubai was dissatisfied. Are we just going to let him go like this? Lu Chen shook his head. No, let's wait and see. If he wanted to fight back, he naturally had to fight back through the movie that was currently being filmed. As long as A Chinese Ghost Story could win the policy support slot and squeeze out the opponent's painted skin, that would be the biggest victory. This incident also made Lu Chen realize that not only did he have to shoot his own movie well, but he also had to understand his opponent's situation. Lu Chen left the task of gathering information to Chen Wenxiang. He took out the envelope with the $10 million check and handed it to Li Mubai. Li Mubai couldn't help but roll his eyes. What? Lu Chen said, of course it's for you. You contributed the most in this matter. You can't help for nothing, right? Li Mubai gave him the middle finger. Do you think I lack this little money? Lu Chen smiled and said, your sister has already called me. Don't be stubborn. Just take it. There's no need to be polite between us. Li Mubai, who had been exposed, suddenly couldn't hold on anymore. He said with a bitter face, my sister is too stingy. She asked me to come to Hong Kong to open a company and only gave me a few million. It's not even enough to eat with friends. Lu Chen laughed and forced the envelope into his hand. You can spend it first. If it's not enough, you can ask me for more. Li Mubai smiled and put away the envelope with a little embarrassment. The friendship between the two of them really didn't need to be hypocritical and polite, let alone a mere 10 million. It was late at night, and third young Master Li's nightlife had just begun. After taking the money, he called his friends. Of course, Lu Chen didn't accompany him. He asked Zhang Xiaofeng to drive him back to his home in Repulse Bay. When he got home, Chen Fei hadn't fallen asleep yet. She was doing beauty maintenance. She was born beautiful, and her skin was better than most people's, but no one's face could stand the ravages of time. Youth couldn't last forever and could only be delayed through beauty maintenance. Especially for actors who often put on makeup, skin care was a very important daily work. You're back. With a mask on her face, she asked vaguely, how's it going? Lu Chen took off his coat, hugged his girlfriend, then sat down on the edge of the bed and said, we made up. Chen Fei chuckled and said, peace makes money. But then again, what's their purpose in doing so much? Do they want to invest in your film or studio? Lu Chen hesitated for a moment and answered truthfully, it was ordered by someone else. Ordered by someone else? Chen Fei was surprised. She took off the mask and asked, do you know who it is? It wasn't terrible to have enemies. In the entertainment circle, if you didn't want to be in cahoots with others, you would definitely offend someone. What was terrible was that the enemy was hiding in the dark and stabbing you at the critical moment. Chen Fei had been in the entertainment circle for more than 10 years, and she had seen the sinister people in the circle, so she was particularly concerned. It's Huaguan Pictures. Lu Chen had to explain, they are also shooting a film in Hong Kong and the theme is the same as ours. It's also based on the story in Strange Stories from a Chinese studio, so there's a direct competition. Huaguan Pictures? Chen Fei frowned and said, I've seen the general manager of Huaguan but Cui Xingxian. She shook her head, and there was a trace of disdain in her eyes. He's arrogant and feels good about himself. Let's not talk about this. Lu Chen smiled and held her in his arms. Honey, let's go to bed early. Then he kissed Chen Fei's fragrant lips. Chen Fei giggled and reached out to cover his mouth. I haven't taken a shower yet. Lu Chen had to let go of her reluctantly. Chen Fei slowly got up and walked to the bathroom. After a few steps, she stopped and looked back at Lu Chen with a seductive look. Do you want to go together? Lu Chen was overjoyed and jumped up. It was a charming night. The next day, the shooting of A Chinese Ghost Story continued. Chen Fei-er, who had begun to get into the mood, performed better and better. The number of NGs was pitifully few, which made director Wan Xiaoquan very satisfied. Now that the trouble had been completely solved, the operation of the crew was smooth, and the morale of the crew was high. It was expected that all the shooting would be completed within the limited time. In the afternoon, Chen Wenxiang brought a piece of information to Lu Chen. This information, which was not very detailed, surprised Lu Chen more or less, because he only now knew that there were more than 20 film and television agencies in the country that had started shooting new films in Hong Kong. In addition to the films that the local film companies in Hong Kong had already finished shooting or had just started shooting, there were at least 100 films participating in the competition for policy support next year. The competition was definitely extremely fierce. According to the information that Chen Wenxiang had learned, in addition to The Painted Skin of Huaguan Pictures, there were also Eternal Love, Spirit Fox, and many other new films that were similar to the theme of A Chinese Ghost Story. A Chinese Ghost Story was facing the competitive pressure of strong opponents. Whether it could stand out among these similar films and get the precious pass was undoubtedly still unknown. But Lu Chen was not afraid of challenges. Chapter 507. Lion Rock Film Base, Studio No. 5. In the huge shed with a real scene arrangement, 3 high-definition digital cameras were pointed up at Chen Fei-er, who was in the air. Her long sleeves fluttered in the air, and accompanied by the sound of shio shio, blood-red ribbons whistled out. The scene was spectacular. The studio was surrounded by a green screen. This kind of shooting method, which used real scenes and post-production special effects, was the most popular and the most mature technology. Cut. Wan Xiaoquan waved the script in his hand and praised loudly, "Good." Today was the most important scene in A Chinese Ghost Story, the battle between Yan Qixia and the Thousand-Year Tree Demon. The atmosphere of the whole film had reached its climax, and it was also the part that required the most post-production. The scenes were heavy, the filming was difficult, and the requirements for the actors were high. Wan Xiaoquan originally wanted to use Chen Fei-er as a stunt double, but the latter refused. The heavenly queen of the music industry personally went into the scene to hang the wire. After many NGs, they finally finished shooting today's scene. The frequent NGs brought about high-intensity work pressure. Just now, everyone was very tired, but seeing that the protagonist, Chen Fei-er, was gritting her teeth and persevering, they had no reason to sit down and rest. Now that the filming was finally completed, many of the crew members could not help but cheer in joy. The wire that was hanging Chen Fei-er was slowly lowered. As soon as her feet touched the ground, her body suddenly went limp, and she lost her balance and was about to fall. Lu Chen was quick-witted. He quickly rushed forward and hugged her. "Fei-er." The others immediately turned pale with fright and hurriedly gathered around, including Wan Xiaoquan. If anything happened to Chen Fei-er, everyone would have a hard time. It would definitely have a huge impact on the crew, and whether they could finish shooting on time would be a problem. Although she had heavy makeup on, the exhaustion on Chen Fei-er's face could not be hidden. She leaned in Lu Chen's arms, forced a smile and said, "I'm fine. I'm just too tired." How could she not be tired? She had spent at least half of the day hanging in the air with all kinds of fighting moves. If she had been physically weak, she would have been paralyzed. Fortunately, Chen Fei-er exercised every day, and she had been sharpened by filming on the prairie, so she could persevere under such high-intensity filming. Even then, she was exhausted to the point of being unable to speak, and her forehead was covered in crystalline beads of sweat. Lu Chen hurriedly untied the wire equipment on Chen Fei-er, then picked her up by the waist and sent her to the lounge. The assistant brought towels, ice packs and water. After wiping her sweat and drinking water, Chen Fei-er's spirit was obviously much better. Just now she was just a little exhausted and now she had almost recovered. But after staying in the wire for so long, coupled with the bumps during the shooting process, she had many bruises on her body, which was very painful when touched, so Lu Chen couldn't help complaining, "I told you not to use a stunt double." He was really distressed. A Chinese Ghost Story involved a lot of fighting and special effects scenes. The battle between Chen Fei-er, the villain boss, Grandma Tree Fairy and Ma Rongzhen's Yan Qixia, was the most important. The movie's action director was jointly held by Lu Chen and another professional. Lu Chen referred to many scenes from the original version of the Dream World in his memory, which was very different from the previous ghost movies. At the same time, there were higher requirements for the actors. Considering that Chen Feier had never filmed an action scene, Wan Xiaoquan proposed to let a member of the Lu family replace her, which was also agreed by Lu Chen. However, he did not expect Chen Feier to firmly refuse and insist on doing it herself. She shook her head and said, "It won't be fun if you use a stunt double. Besides, this is your first movie." There was a big difference between using a stunt double and using the real person. The real person was naturally the most ideal and easiest to shoot, but the premise was that the real person could perform the required actions. In fact, it was not a problem for actors to use a stunt double, because some dangerous actions could only be done by stuntmen. Moreover, if an actor was injured and hospitalized during a dangerous scene, it would drag down the entire crew. It was just that nowadays, many star artists, especially young actors, would habitually use a stunt double when they encountered a slightly more difficult scene, and did not work hard to improve their own ability level. Many directors and producers, in order to catch up with the progress, often tacitly agreed or even supported this. The consequence of this practice was that when the audience watched a movie or TV series, they would always feel that the scene of a stunt double was fake and unreal, and even exposed. Chen Feier was turning to film and television. Her requirements for herself were obviously not satisfied with the female lead in Autumn in My Heart. If she did not do a move well, she would have to repeat it 10 times to pass. It would be strange if she was not tired. Lu Chen was moved and said, "Compared to the movie, you are the most important." The pursuit of career was his life goal, but in Lu Chen's heart, the most important thing was not career and fame, but family, lover, and friends. So what if he gave up the whole world for them? Chen Feier felt Lu Chen's sincerity and love from the bottom of his heart. She smiled sweetly and gently held Lu Chen's hand. A wordless, sweet and warm atmosphere pervaded the small lounge. The assistant quietly shrank to the corner, trying to make himself invisible so as not to disturb the two. Unfortunately, some people did not see this scene. "Feier, are you okay?" Wan Xiaoquan came over and asked with concern, "Do you want to go to the hospital for a checkup or something?" Although Chen Feier was not the real female lead in the eyes of this director, she was much more important than Ye Mingzhu, so he naturally cared about her. Chen Feier was a little embarrassed and let go of Lu Chen's hand. She smiled and said, "I'm fine. I'll be fine after a night of rest." "Then rest for one more day." Wan Xiaoquan said seriously, "The scenes to be shot tomorrow are not very important. Let the double do it." He was afraid that Chen Feier would be stubborn again and insist on acting by herself, so he quickly added, "You have a good rest. Then we will work together the day after tomorrow and finish all your scenes." Lu Chen said quickly, "Director Wan's words make sense." Chen Feier rolled her eyes at Lu Chen coquettishly. She hesitated for a moment and nodded. "Okay, Director Wan." She was not the kind of person who did not know what was good for her. She would not do something that was obviously not necessary. Wan Xiaoquan suddenly felt relieved and said with a smile, "You have been in Hong Kong for more than 10 days. Tomorrow let Lu Chen play with you. Leave the rest to us." Chapter 508. "Ah, and be gentle, it's so sore and, a little harder, a little lower. It's here." In the spacious bedroom, the lamp on the bedside table was on, the soft orange light sprinkled on the big bed, and also sprinkled on the body of Chen Feier, who was lying on her stomach. She was only wearing a nightgown, her jade back was bare, and half of her breasts were exposed. Her eyes were closed and her pretty face was flushed, with an indescribable charm. As for the strange and greasy voice, the culprit who made her moan softly, was currently moving his hands up and down her body, busy to the point of sweating profusely. Chen Feier, whose vital part was pressed, couldn't help but let out a long moan, like a swan that was shot by an arrow. She couldn't help but raise her pink neck, and then heavily fell down, hitting the soft pillow. After a long time she came back to her senses, turned her face to the side, opened her starry eyes and weakly asked, "Where did you learn this from? It's really amazing." Lu Chen sat on the edge of the bed, picked up the bottle on the bedside table, poured some medicinal oil into his hand and said with a smile, "I used to know an old massage master and learned a few moves from him. Do you feel better now?" Today Chen Feier hung on the wire on the set for half a day, and when she returned home at night she was lying on the bed, so tired that she couldn't get up, and after taking off her clothes her body was covered with bruises. Lu Chen looked distressed, so he rummaged through the medicine cabinet, found a bottle of medicinal oil, and gave Chen Feier medicine and massage. He bought the medicinal oil when he went shopping last time. It was an authentic Xiangjiang time-honored brand. The materials used were very authentic, and the method of using medicinal oil to massage to reduce bruises came from Mo Ran's memory. Mo Ran had been practicing martial arts since she was a child, so injuries from falls were common. Therefore, she had learned a set of treatment methods, which happened to be used by Lu Qin on Qin Fei. The effect was really good. The medicinal oil was kneaded and seeped into the skin, and the bruises under the skin dissipated a lot. Most of these bruises were caused by hanging on the wire for a long time, and some of them were caused by bumps during the filming process. Although they were not serious injuries, the consequences would be very troublesome if they were not treated. Qin Fei turned to look at Lu Qin, who was massaging her arm. Her eyes were filled with happiness and sweetness, but after her body and mind were completely relaxed, sleepiness washed over her like a tide, causing her eyelids to droop. Soon Qin Fei's breathing became long and smooth, and he fell into a deep sleep. There was still a faint smile on her lips. Lu Qin put down her arm and carefully covered her with a thin blanket. He then turned the brightness of the lamp to the lowest setting. After doing all this, Lu Qin left the bedroom. He still had a lot of work to do. The next day when Qin Fei woke up from her sleep, the first thing she saw was Lu Qin, who had just walked into the bedroom with eggs and hot porridge. Lu Qin came to the bed with the plate in his hands and said with a smile, "You're awake? I was just about to wake you up." Qin Fei straightened up and watched Lu Qin place the breakfast in front of her. She asked, "What time is it?" Lu Qin smiled and said, "It's noon. You must be hungry now, right?" "It's noon." Hearing Lu Qin's words, Qin Fei really felt hungry. She couldn't help blushing and said coquettishly, "Why didn't you wake me up earlier?" Lu Qin smiled and said, "You slept like a pig. How could I wake you up? It's not too late now." Qin Fei wrinkled her nose and said, "You're the pig." It was very strange that Qin Fei was several years older than Lu Qin, and her debut event was much longer than Lu Qin's. However, in front of Lu Qin she preferred to be a spoiled little girl, because this feeling made her very warm and comfortable. Lu Qin reached out to scratch her nose and said, "Eat breakfast first, then go wash your face and brush your teeth. I'll take you to a party in the afternoon." Qin Fei asked curiously, "What party?" Lu Qin said, "You should know that the Bell Tower Music Salon of Lan Kuai-fong was invited by Yi Xian. Yi Xian was a well-known singer in Xiangjiang, and his position was between the second and third tier. When Lu Qin first came to Xiangjiang, he went to Lan Kuai-fong to play and sang on the stage with Yi Xian at La Dolce Vita 97 bar, so he got to know him. At that time, Lu Qin sang a song called The Love of My Life, which was still one of the top 3 popular songs on Hong Kong radio station, which made him have a large number of fans in Xiangjiang. Yi Xian had a good reputation in the circle, so Lu Qin didn't refuse his invitation. It just happened that he was resting today, so he was going to take Qin Fei to join in the fun. Most importantly, the Bell Tower Music Salon had a very special position in the pop music world of Xiangjiang. Bell Tower Music Salon? Qin Fei had also heard of it. "I know. When I came to Xiangjiang before, someone invited me to participate. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to perform at that time." The Bell Tower Music Salon was founded at the end of the 1980s by several leading figures in the music world at that time. The venue of the party was the Bell Tower Bar in Lan Kuai-fong. The Hong Kong Musicians Salon was held irregularly, and the people invited were all powerful figures in the circle, including but not limited to singers, producers, songwriters, musicians and music critics. As long as they had real talent, they had a chance to be invited. People in the pop music world of Xiangjiang could also participate in the Bell Tower Music Salon, because it was a recognition of their own strength, and they could make more friends in the party. The original intention of the Bell Tower Music Salon was to communicate, to exchange music, to exchange ideas, and to exchange ideas about music. When Lu Qin and Qin Fei arrived at the Bell Tower Bar in Lan Kuai-fong, it was already past 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There was no other way. After yesterday's tiredness and Lu Qin's devastation, Qin Fei, who woke up at noon, was ready to use her best appearance to participate in this gathering of Xiangjiang musicians, which naturally took a lot of time. After carefully dressing up, she looked radiant, and no one could tell that she was so tired yesterday that she almost fell down. Among the many bars in Lan Kuai-fong, the Bell Tower Bar was neither the largest nor the most popular, but anyone who had been in Lan Kuai-fong knew how long its history was. Long before Lan Kuai-fong became a bar street, the Bell Tower Bar opened early. Because it rented the first and second floors of the Lan Kuai-fong Bell Tower, it got its name. Today the Bell Tower Bar had become a historical building in Xiangjiang, and the Bell Tower Bar had also become a part of history, a place that many tourists and drinkers yearned for. But at noon today, the Bell Tower Bar hung up a sign saying it was closed, because the music salon was held here, and many famous singers of Xiangjiang attended. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.